bought out
Yeah,
by a
exactly. All right,
roller
all right, going
coaster.
live, going live. Yeah, like there are second results. Anyway, hello everyone, and welcome to the Gravity Max live stream on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. Today, we are with Pluto, uh, who was with us a few episodes ago when we were talking about
Lord of the Rings.
uh, Lord of the Rings. Yes, um, man, that was fun. Uh, and of course, I'm here with Sebastian as well. So,
Good day.
yeah. Hope everyone is having a nice day. And today we're going to talk about a fun subject. I would say kind of similar to Lord of the Rings, except more like general and like sort of like in real life. We're talking about mythology and different systems of mythology from different places around the world, generally ancient societies. And that's pretty interesting because Lord of the Rings sort of has its own mythology, except like that it's actually true. And so like in the novels, right? It's true in universe, whereas the mythologies we're talking about today uh, were belief systems, but we're like pretty sure they're not true. I mean, you never know, right? Crazy things can happen, but I'm gonna hazard a guess and say that it's not happening. But they're still very interesting to talk about because they shed light on different cultures in the past. So let's just get started with the plugs. All right. Visit the Gravity Max website at gravitymaxmedia.com. Follow Gravity Max on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Patreon. Links in the description. This is where you'll get your updates for anything Gravity Max related. Also, follow Sebastian on social media, 128 seconds on Instagram and YouTube. He makes quick educational videos that are great and are the shorter equivalent to these longer live streams for the busy person on the go. Uh, Make sure to check him out if you haven't already. Links in the description. I think you're close to 1,000, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm getting there.
yeah. So help Sebastian get to 1,000, or really 1,024. Two
Yes.
to the 10, next power of two. Um, but yeah, all right. And then a Somewhat Odd Start on Amazon, my third book in the trilogy. Sci-fi books take place in the future and in space. They're very fun, good reads, and you can get them on Amazon. Links in the description. All right. Lambs, dams, and sometimes
Oh, I
rams.
gotta change it from just lore. I didn't have it reset.
Oh,
Alright,
yeah.
there we go. Yeah,
So, yeah,
we're
go
gonna
ahead.
be bouncing around the planet. It's a big world. People had big ideas a long time ago, and they called them mythology. They saw things they didn't understand, and they put things behind them. They attributed entire beings to scientific principles that they didn't understand. That's one of the main reasons for mythology, but then there's also other things like comfort, for example, like trying to figure out where do we go after we die. That's one of the biggest questions. Mythology usually answers that to some degree. The ones we're looking at, I think, provide a pretty good range of ideas. They all have unique ideas to them, but there are definitely parallels that can be drawn between all of them. We're looking at three, and I think it's going to be a really good stream.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, mythology is a pretty interesting subject. Um, yeah, you said it all.
There we go.
So let's get started with. Oh wait, where did the we had a slide for just Greek, but I don't know where
Did
it
we?
went. Yeah, weird. The title slide, the subtitle, whatever. Here we go.
Oh, it got jacked up.
It just vanished. Who knows where it is? We're starting with Greek mythology, which is probably the best known, I would say, just among lay people. People either Greek or Roman, and again, they're kind of similar.
They're the
We'll
same.
talk about
They're
that
just the
later.
same.
Yeah, yeah,
Rome
they're
just took Greek mythology,
yeah,
like It's like, here, copy my test, but like change some of the answers a little bit. And you just cross out the names and like make a few wrong answers and then you turn it in and the teacher's like, well, this looks totally different. And then that's it. That's Roman mythology in a nutshell.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll get to that. But yeah, we're starting with Greek mythology, which everyone's probably familiar with to like a certain degree. Like if you've heard of Zeus or Poseidon or Hades, then you know at least a little bit about Greek mythology. And we're going to talk about them. So, what period of time was this in Greece? Was this the like 800s and 700s BC? Is this what we're talking about? I forgot what the period's called, but it's like I think it starts with an M. Um,
Yeah, like Greek, this Greek paganism stuff with the polytheism survived in Greece until Christianity came and
okay.
basically wiped it out. And that's what we were talking about before. I know that happened. We were talking about how that happened in Rome with Constantine. Um, and I would estimate that that happened in Greece as well. Um, Probably around the
Yeah,
same
Greece was
time.
part of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So,
So if Constantine ruled in from 306 to 337 AD, I would say that
mhm.
that marked the end.
Okay.
For the beginning, I wouldn't really know. Pluto, do you have any idea on that?
I don't really know like the years and stuff like that,
Hmm.
but
I
it's
think
like it's the beginning of Greece essentially.
I think the years I was saying was like when Homer was around.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a good start because that's when it was like first written. Um, I don't know if you have confirmation on is that were the years right? 700, 800 BC.
Yeah, Homer wrote the Iliad in 8th century BC, so that's
All right.
the year. Is that 700 or 900?
Oh God, it's
Now we
I
got
don't
to do
even.
it
I'm just not gonna
backwards.
try.
Yeah.
It's the worst. Don't don't do the century naming system. It's bad. Just say 700s, 800s, whatever it may be. It's so much better. Anyway, um, yeah. So that's roughly the time period we're talking about here. Sort of ancient Greece leading up to and into the Roman Empire, and then up until around the time that Christianity started to spread throughout the Roman Empire. So, yeah, let's begin with the creation myth of Greek mythology.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So
uh,
the main point here is that, and you see this in a lot of other cultures, is that it's called the cosmic egg, which is fantastic, fantastic naming system. I gotta say, cosmic egg. It means that the very first thing in the universe was chaos, and just that in it of itself, you see in a ton of myths and a ton of mythology. So the entire universe was chaos, and it was encapsulated in this egg. And then, from that chaos, there came two beings, which were Erebus and Nyx, or darkness and night. And then from Erebus and Nyx, there's this whole lineage of other things that we recognize as like other forces in life, like Thanatos, who is responsible for death, like hypnos, sleep, all that kind of stuff. Dreams is there. Nemesis, Eros for love, all that kind of stuff. But the important one for the creation myth is Gaia, because Gaia comes out of this chaos as well. And then Gaia eventually gives birth to Uranus, who will eventually become Gaia's husband. You can debate the ethics of that however you will. But from Uranus and Gaia, Uranus is supposed to represent the sky, and Gaia is supposed to be the earth. And again, that is something you see in a lot of myths about how, like, Father Sky and Mother Earth. That's in like Native American myths, in a bunch of myths, Chinese, I believe, as well. But from them, they had a lot of children, including the Titans. And the Titans are basically well known for being the predecessors of the gods that and the gods are what most people know in Greek mythology, specifically the Olympians. So Uranus and Gaia give birth, or they copulate and they create these titans, and the most famous of those titans is Cronus, or Kronos. His Roman name is Saturn, and he is the father of Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, and a couple other Olympians that we'll get to later. And he is not the nicest guy, I gotta say, on the tier list of dads, ranking near the bottom. He and his wife Rhea, they basically, anytime Rhea has a child, Kronos is like, you know what, and eats it. And I think it might have been because he was given some prophecy by a different Titan that his children would one day overthrow him. That's usually what you see.
I think that's the gist of it.
And it's also very important to note, and it's very interesting to note, that Kronos also ended up overthrowing his own father, Uranus. There was a conflict between them, and I think he, castrated his dad or something. There's, different tellings of it, but basically he was not nice to his father, and now he's not being nice to his children. So, all around, not the best guy. But
are you boiling down swallowing your children whole to not being nice?
Yeah, and it's not technically murder either, because you gotta remember, the gods are immortal. Everything that I've named so far is immortal. So,
I feel like not nice is a bit of an understatement.
It is. I'll retract that statement. He is abhorrent to his children.
He's eating them.
He's eating his he's eating his children. He is, just om nom nom, one after the other. But they are immortal, like a hamster. But after a while, Rhea, his wife, is like, you know what? This is kind of ridiculous. Like, this is not the man I married. Or I didn't really marry him. I just kind of got forced into it. Also, he's my brother. But basically, she swaps their sixth kid out with this massive boulder that she wraps in a cloth and hands to Kronos, and she's like, "Here's your son," and he's like, and then goes back to sleep. But the kid that she swapped out was Zeus, and she hides him somewhere in Greece on one of the Greek isles, I believe, where he sits there and he matures, or he gathers his strength or something. And then Zeus comes back and he makes Kronos vomit out all of his brothers and sisters that Kronos had been eating. And again, they're immortal, so they're just chilling in their dad's stomach. And he pukes all of them out, and then he also pukes out the stone, and wherever that's, the stone was said to, land somewhere, and there is that actual stone in real life. It's I think it's a landmark or something in Greece, or it's something in Greece. I don't know exactly what the stone is called, but they're this stone was the one that, was swapped out for Zeus. But basically, after all the gods get out of their dad, they all team up, and there's this massive war between the gods and the Titans, and the gods win. And then they basically divvy up the world's powers. The three most powerful, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, they divvy up the sky, the underworld, and the sea, respectively. And then they all, the 12 Olympians live on Mount Olympus, and the other gods just kind of live elsewhere. But the Olympians are usually the focal point of Greek mythology, I'd say. But there's some cool lesser gods that we'll also get to. But that is basically the story, going all the way from just chaos all the way down to Zeus. Big themes.
So chaos chaos, essentially.
Yeah. And Zeus is a pretty chaotic guy. We'll get into that too. Quite the character.
Yeah.
Quite the character.
So something interesting for like people that are into astronomy is that pretty much everything in astronomy in our solar system is named after either a Greek or Roman figure, like myth. Typically a god, but it could be a Titan or whatever Uranus was that's like even before Titan, primordial being,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, like all the planets and many significant asteroids are named after that. So one question I do have in this creation myth is where do humans come in? When were humans created, and like how were they created? What do the Greeks say about that?
That's a good question. Currently, off the top of my head, I'm not sure about that. I could go look in my reference notes. Pluto, do you have any idea?
All I know is that like they had a lot of interactions with the Titans pre-god stuff, like Prometheus giving them fire and stuff. And I know that they were very grateful to the gods for getting rid of the Titans, I believe. So somewhere in between those things, humans happened. I think I want to say they were Gaia's thing.
So I just looked at it, and also, I also want to talk about the 5 ages real quick. But I'll do that after this. It's claiming that it was Prometheus, and I kind of remember that because it was him and his brother, Prometheus and Epimetheus, which means before thought and after thought. So Prometheus is forethought. So he's like the wise, smart, intelligent guy, and his brother Afterthought is more the, hey, we should have done that, shouldn't we? You know? So he's like not useful at all. So Prometheus and Epimetheus didn't fight the gods during the war between the Titans and the gods. So they were actually spared. They like were just kept around. So but later on Prometheus would get himself into some trouble. But Prometheus and Epimetheus were tasked with creating these humans. And this was after there were multiple iterations of the Earth, or not of the Earth itself, but of like, they're referred to as ages, I think.
Of like life, I guess.
Yeah, because they basically tried different like ultimate forms of life on the planet, like different superior forms of life on the planet. And they went through the gold age, the silver age, the bronze age, the age of heroes, and then the 5th age that we're currently in is the iron age. And basically each one was like worse than the last one or something, so they tried to go in a new direction. So Zeus phoned up the 2 brothers, and he was like, hey, we gotta do this again. We had to scrap the last guys. Come up with something, why don't you? So like and there was like this whole thing about how Epimetheus wanted all of these ridiculous things, and Prometheus just kept shooting them down. But like anything bad with like humans is like just like with the human physiology is associated with Epimetheus, and you know the good functioning parts are associated with Prometheus. But apparently it was said that Prometheus was the shaper of the human body. He shaped man out of mud or out of clay, and that's something you see in a lot of myths, humans coming from mud or clay, and it was actually Athena that breathed life into his clay figure.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like back pains. Thanks, Epimetheus.
Yeah, that's Epimetheus
like,
right there.
Dang.
Allergies, Epimetheus.
Yeah. Interesting.
But yeah, that's the creation myth in a nutshell. And that paved the way for the Olympians. But we can also and the Titans, which is what we're gonna look at next. So
we already talked about the Titans a little bit, but basically when they lost the war, they were all like punished to certain fates. Um, and one famous one is Atlas, who has to hold up the sky forever. He just has to sit there and hold up the sky, which is probably very heavy. They were all locked away in whatever their punishment was.
Tartarus, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's it.
Yeah, do you want to explain that more?
That's just kind of like a big hole in the underworld. So there's like in specifically Roman mythology, they called it the Elysian Fields, which is where all the heroes went. And then there was just Misk Underworld, where I forget the name of it, where everyone like normal went, and then there was Tartarus, which is a big hole, and that's where the crappy people went.
And that's like the worst, deepest, most
that's
horrible
like
part.
hell.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent, I guess. And the Elysian Fields is like heaven, but they're all in the same general domain where Hades, you know, oversees things.
Interesting.
And then there's like medium hell where like the Furies are, and they're just like harassing like the mediocre bad people, but not bad enough to be in Tartarus, but not good enough to be in the Elysian Fields, but also not quite good enough to be in like the Misk area. So they just have these bird women just harassing them all day long.
Interesting. So do the Titans, even though they are like being damned, do they still have some sort of role, like all of them? Like, do they still have, like, I don't know, a job, I guess, or like a phenomenon associated with them, even though they're like locked up?
I guess some of them, like I know Astraeus, who's like down there on the bottom right. If you're on that side, I don't know where you are.
Yeah.
He's associated with like stars and constellations in the sky and stuff like that, as is his daughter and such. And I don't know that he was damned to Tartarus or whatever, like a lot of the more problematic ones. So some of them I think just kind of chilled in their general domain for the rest of their existences.
Interesting. So Kronos or Cronus, he was time related. So is he still time related in terms of the present? But all right, so he's just
like, in prison time related. He's doing like they're all doing what they do. They're just locked away doing it, I guess.
Okay.
He's doing time.
You know what?
Yeah. Interesting. Making sure the clocks still run.
Yeah. Yeah, but they all took like pretty subservient roles. It's like, I mean, like Atlas, he's forced to hold up the heavens and stuff like that. And
Helios is still like the sun and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it's all like they have to become just sort of the basic, like
yeah, their freedom was like stripped away from them, but they're all still responsible for the thing. Like I'm sure Epimetheus is still like an idiot. Although, like I don't know if he got imprisoned. We know Prometheus got imprisoned, and I think we talk about that story a bit later. But that was because he brought fire down when Zeus was like, no, keep him in the dark for whatever reason.
Because Zeus sucks.
Yeah, Zeus does suck. He really does. Yeah. And if I get struck by lightning right now, you know exactly who's behind it. But yeah, so the Titans, like technically they are more powerful than the gods, but because they lost the battle for the universe, I guess,
it's like the whole plot of Disney's Hercules.
Exactly. They they got imprisoned and they were forced to be subservient. And that's one of the biggest motifs, and again we saw it with Uranus and Cronus, or Zeus and Cronus, of younger generations outclassing older ones. That's a very common motif with a lot of Greek myths. But yeah. So the Titans came before the gods, and the most important of the gods, or the most like studied of the gods, are the Olympians, who are named because they are supposed to live on Mount Olympus.
A perfectly unclimbable mountain that the Greeks were just like, over there.
Yeah. Later on, I think the Greeks kind of realized that. They're like, hey, if everyone's supposed to live on that mountain, and I can kind of see the top of that mountain, and it's not looking too good. Some of the later Greek poets changed it so that Olympus was more a kind of like pocket dimension, or like space between Earth and the heavens, and like you could like teleport to it if you went to the top of the thing. Again, they still didn't venture out to try and do that, but they tried to like explain it that
dumbass kid was like, I'm gonna go fight Zeus, and climb the mountain, and there was nothing there. And then Christianity was born. Not really, but
yeah. But
yeah, that is pretty interesting. That it's just like a normal mountain.
I mean,
that does present problems. Like, I can go there.
Yeah, that is something that all three of the things that we're talking about today have in common. They all met their fate. All of these mythologies met their fate at the hands of Christianity.
That is true. That is interesting.
Yeah. So that's, Christianity had its, strongest hold in Europe, I'd say. So, Greek paganism really did not stand much of a chance against it. And then, obviously, it spread out to the rest of the world. But, so we can move into talking about the Olympians.
All right.
And we start with the big man himself, Zeus. Oh boy. What an issue. What an absolute mad lad. He is he's the most powerful. He and his two brothers, Hades and Poseidon, we have that smaller familial chart over there, and that's also in order of age. So he's actually the youngest of the Hestia is not an Olympian, but of the Olympians that were
they really juked her out of that role.
They really did. But again, that's
cool too.
Yeah, she is. Again, that's another thing, is that like younger becoming more powerful. Zeus is the youngest, and he becomes the most powerful. So, out of Hades, Poseidon, Zeus, they all draw straws together, and Zeus drew the biggest one, so he got the heavens. Poseidon got the middle one, so he gets the sea, and Hades got the smallest one, which was the underworld. Apparently, that's the worst one. I kind of see it.
I think it's cool.
I could see how it would be bad for some, because, think about it, you were just trapped in your dad's stomach for eternity, and now you gotta be trapped underground for eternity. I can see the psychology of it, but yeah, no, it's not too bad, just ruling over the underworld.
Yeah.
And he gets a cottagecore GF later on, so it all works out.
He does. He just kind of wanders in, and in some tellings, she just waltzes into the underworld because there was a big hole in the ground. She's like, I wonder what this is.
But so Zeus got the heavens, so he's the god of thunder. He is the god of the heavens, and he's the ruler of Olympus. So all the most quote-unquote powerful stuff, because in a lot of mythologies, also Norse, which we'll talk about later, the most powerful god is the god of storms, or the god of thunder, stuff like that. Those gods associated with those tend to be the most powerful. And Zeus was also almost omnipotent. He's the closest any of the gods really got. He had his birds, his eagles would watch things for him. He was able to shapeshift, which he did a lot. That's what he's also kind of known for, is shapeshifting and seducing women in animal form and having children
works
with them.
Way too often, I would like to add.
Yeah, it is interesting. I was about to say, all the Zeus stories of he has many demigod children. I mean, the most notable being Heracles, or if you're using the Roman equivalent, Hercules, which you're probably more familiar with. But
Perseus is up there too.
Or Huncules.
Perseus.
Continue.
I feel, yeah. But yeah, so you've got all of these different children, and it is strange because I feel like it's more than one myth, right? Where Zeus turns into some sort of animal. Like the one I can think of is a swan.
Yeah,
Like he turns into
there's
a
a bull.
swan.
There's a cow.
Dude, yeah,
I don't
the cow one is
understand how
messed
that
up.
helps.
Well, okay,
to,
wait, no, listen
like,
to the cow
distract
one real
someone.
quick.
I don't get it. But.
So there was this girl named Europa, and she's just chilling in a field with all of these other virgin women, and they're just hanging out, but they're by this ocean, and Zeus is like, hey, I'm kind of bored, and Europa's looking mighty fine today. So he does the ethical thing, and he turns himself into a bull, and, you know, he approaches them, like, slowly. They're all like, oh, look at this bull, look at it. And they start petting his mane, and then, like, he coerces Europa to, like, get on top of him to mount him. And then as soon as she does, he zips off at, like, superhuman speed, like Mach 10 across the water, and, like, you know, kidnaps her, basically. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of Zeus just doing whatever the hell he pleases.
So strange.
Like, Zeus is never reprimanded for anything, and he has a wife. His sister Hera is his wife, and who's also the goddess of marriage. But anytime, yes, and victim blaming, because anytime Zeus gets with a girl, Hera gets mad, understandable, but then punishes the girl. Not too understandable, considering that, like...
Well, she can't really punish her husband, so she's doing the next best thing, I guess.
But, I'm not sure if she punished Europa, because, like, that was just so outside the realm. That was just the most insane thing ever, because Europa literally had no hand in it. Hera, punishment... No. Yeah, no, she never punished her. Yes.
Well, something interesting too is that I find the naming interesting of objects in space, because Jupiter is the Roman equivalent of Zeus, right? And one of Jupiter's moons is Europa.
Callisto was also a girl that he got with, as was... I'm pretty sure Ganymede was in there too, and I know Io was also in there, but I think Io might have played a different purpose.
And didn't NASA send
that's why
a
they
rover to Jupiter?
Oh yeah,
Juno,
they
the Roman equivalent for Hera. So they essentially sent his wife to check on him.
Yep, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, they sent Juno to, like, orbit around Jupiter and study it, and yeah, Juno is Hera, and so it's just funny. It's like. It's very it's like it's good naming. It is just good job. Usually I find naming in science to be pretty poor, but, like, good job on that one. That was smart.
So
sending his wife to go monitor his proceedings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Io was another girl that he got with. That was the one where he, like, Hera was like asked him point blank, "You cheating on me?" And he's like, "Of course not, babe. When have I ever done that? Forget the 6,000 other times."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Okay," but he knows that he's watching her. So what he does is he turns Io into a cow, and so, like, Hera just shows up and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm just hanging out with this cow." "What are you doing?" And, you know, the story goes south from there. I don't exactly remember how, but that's what I remember from that story. And I'm pretty sure Ganymede, Callisto were also girls that he got with. So,
yeah, and Callisto was with Artemis. They were lovers, and then Zeus stole his daughter's girl, and then she died.
Yeah, it's never too great to have an affair with Zeus.
To be a woman
wasn't
in
Callisto,
Greece, I would argue.
Wasn't Callisto in the Odyssey?
That was Calypso.
Oh, Calypso. Okay.
But
all right, never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So things associated with Zeus are, I'm pretty sure, the oak tree, his eagles, and he is also the father of a bunch of the other Olympians, including Athena, who sprung from his head. I'm trying to think now. Possibly
Artemis and
Hephaestus.
Apollo.
Yes, Artemis and Apollo, because he got with the other girl, not Hera. How many of them are just directly from Zeus and Hera?
I think that's Hephaestus.
Hera, children. Children, please. Ares, possibly Hephaestus, and then Athena is just strictly Zeus. But yeah, so it's hysterical that the vast majority of Zeus's children are not with his wife, and there you go.
Poor woman.
Yeah. But Hera is very wrathful. I think she's probably one of the most wrathful gods.
I mean Ares.
Ares is he's got some issues. But,
I mean Athena, think of her punishments as well.
Yeah. So yeah, the Greek gods, that's the other thing, is that the motif of cruel gods is something we see, and we'll definitely see in the next set of myths, because, oh boy, I did some research, guys. It is so bad. It is so bad. But, regardless of that, you do see the motif of cruel, they don't usually make gods quote unquote perfect, or I guess the correct word is benign. Even the Christian monotheistic Christian God, in the Old Testament, was described as being incredibly cruel and harsh, and still is. If you go to church, that's what they tell you. But that motif, I mean, you got to think about it. These religions were created in whatever BC, when the world was pretty damn cruel. If you got a tooth infection, you were probably going to die at 20. Stuff like that.
20 is a generous estimate.
It is a very generous
The
estimate.
mortality rate for children in Rome, they would name their children numbers because they had to figure out which one died, and they didn't want to get too attached to them, so they'd be like 7.
Oh my god, yeah. Decimus. They're on the 10.
Oh my god.
It's horrible.
That's interesting. Yeah, that does make me think, just in terms of structuring these sort of belief systems. It is interesting how each god, since it sort of corresponds to a force of nature, it makes sense that they can be both good and bad. If you were to take Poseidon, for instance, the sea can give you fish, but it can also completely wreck you in so many ways. Whereas in monotheistic or Christianity specifically, it's you've got God and you got Satan, right? So it's okay, everything bad can be Satan, everything good can be God. It's a lot simpler. But it is interesting. It's a bit more dynamic.
Yeah.
This system.
So yeah, Zeus is known for basically enjoying his power to the fullest extent, because he knows no one can check him. It's been said that he is more powerful than all the other gods combined, which is it renders him practically unbeatable. There's something in Norse myth, which we'll talk about, where humans can actually somewhat best gods if they're very tricky or they're doing things. There's some of that in Greek myth, but it is never with Zeus. There's the weaving competition with Athena, right? That's Ares,
Yeah, and Athena
Arachne.
turns into a spider.
Yeah.
And
Because
there's
she got
Odysseus
bested.
tricking everyone and Poseidon and stuff like that.
Yeah. So occasionally the gods do get bested, or they get outwitted, or things like that. It's never Zeus. Zeus is never outwitted. He's never checked by anyone. He's too powerful. like probably out of any of the gods we'll talk about on the live stream, Zeus is probably the most powerful of the polytheistic ones that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Zeus, god of thunder, god of the heavens. He drew the biggest straw, and so now he gets to turn into animals and have 7,000 love affairs. Such is life.
Yep.
But
such is life.
yeah. So if we don't have anything else, we can hop on over to his brother, his older brother, Poseidon.
Poseidon sucks.
We don't love Poseidon in this house.
Yeah.
This annoys me,
Poseidon.
especially when you're horrified of the ocean. Like, I have
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What's your biggest
Poseidon
gripe with Poseidon? Medusa. Okay. You want to talk about that?
That whole situation.
You want to talk about that situation real quick?
Sure. Is that, like, can I use the proper terminology?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in the Temple of Athena, Poseidon brought Medusa in there and raped her, like, aggressively. And then Athena was like, "Did you do that?" And Poseidon was like, "No." And Athena was like, "Are you sure you didn't do that?" And he was like, "I am so sure." And then she turned Medusa into a gorgon. And then sent Perseus to cut her head off. And then he did. So, that's my biggest issue with Poseidon, personally.
Yeah, Poseidon is often at odds with Athena. That's probably the biggest beef in Olympus is Poseidon and Athena. On the right there, you actually see the competition for Athens. The city of Athens, before it was named Athens, was named something else. I don't know what it was named, but basically they needed a patron god to keep the city safe, and they were going to name the city after their patron god. So Athena and Poseidon step up, and they have a contest to see who would be a better patron god for the city. So what they do is basically they get to do one thing, and whichever one benefits the city more, whoever did that thing gets to be the patron god. So Poseidon uses his trident, as you can see in the painting, and he creates this massive stream of water. And Athena uses her spear and strikes it into the earth and creates an olive tree. And Athena wins because Poseidon didn't take into account that the stream he had created was salt water, so it didn't help anyone. So the olive tree was able to nourish the people of what would then be called Athens, because she becomes the patron god. So Poseidon's always salty about that.
Ha ha.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I do remember a lot of that from the Odyssey, where basically Odysseus, I forget how, but like the inciting incident is that he pisses off Poseidon,
Mm-hmm.
and so then for the rest of the book, Poseidon is just tormenting him and trying to mess with him. And I do think I remember like Athena via Hermes like helping out quite a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to spite Poseidon, just like, oh, Poseidon doesn't like you, I must like you. I'll help you out. I find it funny because it's kind of like very like petty and tribal, which is just sort of comedic for like the gods, the ancient beings of the universe to be acting this way. It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Like, Poseidon was Odysseus's biggest obstacle. He just kept blowing him into things or, knocking his boat around. It makes sense because...
Odysseus did kill his son. Like, stab him in the eye.
That's also true. The Cyclops Polyphemus was his son, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, all right. Now I remember that. Yeah, the Cyclops. Okay.
But... it makes sense. And it makes sense that Poseidon is canonically the second most powerful because the Greeks were avid sailors, so they would encounter Poseidon a lot more. And in the mythology, Poseidon is a lot more, directly involved. Like Zeus does a lot of things from his throne. Like he's more like in the background, which if you think about it, thunder, it's in the background, even though it's in like seemingly incredibly powerful, it's kind of more removed. Whereas if you're getting bashed around in the ocean, you're gonna get your stuff rocked, and like Poseidon is also partially the god of storms. It's just storms like out on the water, so like hurricanes and stuff like that, or like typhoons. He's associated with dolphins. You'll usually see him with his trident. That's his weapon of choice. He has a chariot. He hangs out with a lot of nymphs, all that kind of stuff. Any kind of water is associated with him. Rivers are more like nymphs, but yeah, he's the water dude. That's what he does, man. Second most powerful, still nowhere near the power of Zeus.
And he's definitely not as smart as most of the other gods, I would argue. I feel like he in most of the myths, he's not known for like tricking people or outsmarting people. He's just known for being angry and sending waves at people.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely hot-headed.
Yeah.
No offense, but
yeah, exactly.
It's gonna start violently raining.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's pretty cloudy right now. I'm not gonna lie to you.
We gotta watch our ass off after this stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not ideal. We gotta be careful who we're dissing too.
Dude,
like,
before
Poseidon, they're probably not gonna do anything. I don't think they're petty enough to really care about us. But some of the others they will be angry.
Demeter has us in her sights, son.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Aphrodite too.
Yeah. Dude, before we got on this stream, and I gotta pull the proper pronunciations up of the Aztec ones. Zach was like, "Hey, make sure you don't mispronounce the Aztec gods." He's like, "They will rock your stuff, man. You will be down on the ground." Yeah, dude, they are. The Aztec gods make Zeus seem like a kind of good father figure. Like the Aztec gods make Hera seem like cool and like like not wrathful, just like level-headed. Yeah, they make that seem like a charitable gesture. But
I'm excited to
dude, it is a trip. But yeah, that's Poseidon. Beefs with Athena. We don't like him.
All right.
We don't. Sorry.
Hades. So he is a dog owner, as well as the patron and overseer of the underworld, and that's that's a point of confusion, right? Like he's not the god of death; he's the god of the underworld, right?
He's the god of the dead, not of death itself.
Yes, because death itself is Thanatos.
Yeah, he's the god of those who have already died.
Yes. So, eventually he's going to be our boss or our landlord, depending on how you see it. He has a three-headed dog named Cerberus or Kerberos, who
roughly translates to spot if you go through enough channels.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
Yep. Wholesome three-headed dog. Even though it's probably very vicious. Still
I love him.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't bury me with a milk bone so I can give Cerberus a bone when I die, I'll be so upset.
But yeah, third most powerful god. He's the last of the quote-unquote big three. He he appears in a decent amount of myths, I would say, but usually as a removed character. Like, he's always present.
He's less wrathful than most. Like, if you look at his punishments in comparison to, like, Zeus's or Poseidon's, they're much more benign.
Yeah, absolutely. He, he rules over the underworld. His most well-known story where he's actually, like, involved in is probably the Persephone myth.
Or Orpheus and Eurydice.
That as well, yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Orpheus and Eurydice, they got married, and then Eurydice promptly was bitten by a snake. and died. And Orpheus was like, shit. And so he travels down to the underworld. He's some famous singer guy. And plays the lyre. He's cool. Kind of. And he travels down to the underworld to try and make a deal with Hades and Persephone, so to like rescue Eurydice and bring her back to life and bring her back to the overworld, I guess. And so he plays them a song. He's very compelling. And so they're like, sure, you can walk her back up, but if you turn around for 1 second and look at her, doomed, dead. She is dead, so dead. And guess who turned around? Orpheus. And so Eurydice died again. And Orpheus went mad and, kind of freaked out and was accosted by women for the rest of his life.
Well, wasn't it like, since he's such a good music player, right? He got so sad that his music just became so awful that the natural world just began crumbling, like, crops wouldn't grow and like everything's dying. And so people are like, dude, get out of here.
Yeah, he's the original emo band. My Chemical Romance aspires to be Orpheus.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other myth that he's associated with is the Persephone myth, and that's what the painting is. That is Hades chilling with Persephone on his right, and that's Demeter coming up and probably not being too nice to Hades, probably being a little forward. And that is because there's a bunch of different tellings. Some of them are Persephone, like we were saying earlier, just like wandered into the underworld. Or sometimes it's Hades just kind of grabbed her and kidnapped her all the way down to the underworld, which is actually interesting because as I was doing the Aztec research, there's a story very similar to this in there that I want to talk about. But one way or the other, Persephone finds her way into the underworld, and Persephone is the daughter of Demeter, who is the sister of Zeus and Hades and Poseidon. She is the goddess of wheat and of like crops, so definitely a more like earthy god or goddess. And her daughter is Persephone, who is like spring and fertility, stuff like that. So Demeter's not too pleased seeing her daughter gone, so she basically makes all the crops on the planet die, and eventually like enough people are starving or freezing to death that like
Zeus kind of just like
Zeus is like, hey girly, so I understand that your daughter's gone and that Hades most definitely took your daughter, but everyone's dying and they're somewhat important, so could you not? And she's like, hey man, give me my daughter, I'm not messing around. And he's like, so he calls up Hermes, and Hermes is like, yo, what's poppin'? And he's like, we need to resolve this, my guy. So Hermes goes and delivers this message, and basically they reach this truce where for 3 months every...
6.
It's 6?
It's half the year.
I thought it was 3 months.
I thought it was 6. I thought it was like half the year she's above ground and half the year she's in the underworld. That's like the telling I always heard.
Yeah, and again, there's like a lot of different tellings from all this, just because things are like lost through history, or people have different takes on it. How long is Persephone?
Yeah, this is really interesting though, because another way you could look at it, right, is that since Persephone is like spring and fertility, if she's gone, then how could anything grow, right?
Yeah, it's winter.
And I do like this myth because it's sort of like it gives a like reason that there are seasons. It says that, during winter it's because Persephone's gone, and when spring has sprung, that is because Persephone has returned.
Yeah.
Which is like a very interesting like way of looking at it.
So it is either 6 months, 3 months, or 4 months, but 6 months is the most accepted. So yeah, 6 months she has to stay with Hades. The other 6 months, she gets to be a free agent. But
It's interesting because in this specific myth, it's unclear whether it was like a voluntary action or she was kidnapped. But in most other surrounding myths, the most widely accepted telling is that they have a happy marriage despite how it happened. Like they have the most stable marriage out of most of the gods and goddesses in this realm. Like they're just kind of chilling, you know?
power.
There's
Yeah.
no horrific tales of them having huge marital blowouts like Zeus and Hera and stuff like that. Like they have a relatively stable relationship despite the unknown circumstances with which it, like, you know,
Yeah.
happened.
And you always love to see a power couple.
Exactly, and she's known for being way more than Hades by like a long shot. Like she's known as like being a bitch, where Hades is just kind of like, let my wife do what my wife wants to do.
Interesting.
But yeah, so that's that whole situation. Hades, yeah, he's cool. Probably like out of the big three, he's probably my favorite. He's probably everyone's favorite out of the big three, TBH, to be honest. But
Yeah.
you know,
He's
apparently,
definitely problematic.
yeah,
Seems a lot more chill. Like,
yeah, like
and like reasonable
establishing that
and moral, I
ultimatum.
guess, which is strange.
Yeah, establishing that ultimatum with, not Oedipus, Orpheus. It's just thinking Oedipus. Not that I'm thinking about Oedipus, but the establishing that ultimatum with Orpheus. Kind of a dick move, but like I get it. If you're supposed to be like the landlord of the place, sometimes you gotta like buck up.
And that was mostly Persephone's doing. Like, he wooed Persephone with his music, and Persephone was like, Hades, please, it's so pretty, it's a liar. And Hades was like, anything for you, honey. And then that happened.
Oh, that's great.
Means you won't sick your mother on me, then.
Yeah, that is the definition of being afraid of your wife's in-law or your wife's mom, your in-laws. That is, oh boy. But so I guess that's the second biggest beef is Demeter and Hades, because you know she still has that grudge.
Oh, she is not pleased. It doesn't matter how old they are now and how long they've been married and how many times Persephone may or may not have been like, it's a happy marriage, I'm so happy to be my husband. She does not give a crap.
She doesn't care. It is on site. But so Hades is a little bit of an oddball because he's technically an Olympian, but he spends most of his time in the underworld. Like, yeah, he goes up to Olympus, but not as often as some others. So sometimes he's left out of like council decisions, but it's always like Hermes who has to kind of run down to the underworld. He's like, you've been paged,
Like, get his vote.
and it like runs back and all that. But yeah, that's Hades. That concludes the three most powerful Greek gods. Next, we get Dionysus and who we just talked about, Demeter. These guys, they're fun. Dionysus is he is loved. I gotta say, he is the god of revels. He's the god of partying. He's the god of wine, of celebration, of just having a good time. You know, that's.
I bet like he's the reason like Greek life at colleges is a thing.
Honestly, he's kind of the reason that that theater is a thing, because theater was acting was created in ancient Greece during the festival of Dionysus, which occurred annually in Athens. And basically this guy, I think his name was Thespius, which is why you call actors thespians. He was the first actor, because at this festival of Dionysus, usually what people would do is they just sit there and they tell you a story. They're like, and then Zeus went there and did that. It wasn't problematic. But what this guy did is he actually started doing voices for the characters, and he had these masks that he would put on so he could play different parts, and people lost their minds. They were like, give him the Oscar! The other person's like, what's an Oscar? And all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so he is the original actor, and it was all for the Festival of Dionysus. Obviously, he's got enough clout to have an entire annual festival of him. Anytime people were getting turnt in ancient Greece, it'd be for Dionysus, that wine, all of that kind of stuff. That's why he's right here with grapes. He is the other earthy god, counterpart to Demeter, who is the, crops, wheat, all that kind of stuff. Dionysus is also associated with vines. But it's also interesting because first of all, his birth, Zeus kind of killed his mom, kind of accidentally.
So Dionysus into his leg
Yeah.
and gave birth to him.
He was like,
Old.
I can incubate you, and it just slapped him into his leg until he was born. But Dionysus is seen as having a duality. Both Dionysus and Demeter are, because they're the ones that are most closely associated with the actual forces of nature. And nature can be very prosperous, or it can be very hostile towards you. So Dionysus is also the god of madness and stuff like that. And that's also associated because of the association with wine, about how wine can make you happy and all that kind of stuff. But, if you drink too much, it can kind of rob you of your sanity and stuff like that. But they characterize Dionysus in that way, so that he kind of had two parts to him, the good, fun part, but then the But that's him. If you have
I feel
anything
like
on
someone
him,
came up with Dionysus as an excuse for day drinking.
yeah.
Someone was like, "Oh, haven't you heard? This is the new thing. It's Dionysus," and they're like, "Who are you talking about?"
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, it makes sense that Dionysus would be popular. Right? You had the cult of Dionysus, and people were just very much into Dionysus.
Yeah.
Just because fun.
He's a fun
Parties. Yeah.
And Demeter is the one that's also most closely associated with him. Again, other nature god. And she can be plentiful. She could be nice. The crops can be good, but they can also be bad, and she could also be a nightmare of an in-law. So a duality exists there as well. But they are the two earth gods, is usually, and which is why we have them grouped here.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very important in just any mythology, to have your agriculture goddess. And it is interesting because all of these gods sort of serve a purpose in terms of people would pray to them. So it's if it's specifically if you're having a tough time with your harvests, it's okay, Demeter, go to Demeter to figure it out. If you're in a time of war, it's you pray to Athena.
Not Aries.
Sort of
you're in a time of war. Do
not Aries.
Aries.
Yeah,
Whatever
exactly.
you do, you will lose so bad.
It would not go well, and we'll talk about that. Yeah, so this is interesting. Pray to Dionysus to have a good time. That's yeah, very interesting.
So now we go on to Artemis and Apollo, the moon and the sun. So Artemis is one of the virgin goddesses. She is a daughter of Zeus, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Right. She's the twin of Apollo. So Artemis represents the moon and the hunt, which is why she's out there in the woods. She's super good at archery, and she is also the protector of children. That's another thing about her, is that she is the protector of the youthful. So if you were to do wrong to a child, she would be the one that shows up and just gives it to you. Yeah. She closely associated with animals because of hunting and stuff like that. Hunting would obviously be really big in Greek society. That'd be like outside of crops, it'd be their main source of food. Still is, like in today. But it's interesting that she is associated with the moon. And she also had a couple of counterparts to her, if I'm remembering correctly, and it was in correspondence. It was like based off the fact that the moon changes. She would also change, like over time. She had a couple of different forms, but her best known one is just like Artemis, and it's just called Artemis. And
the huntress.
That's just huntress. And Apollo's the sun.
Yeah, I like Artemis and Apollo.
Yeah.
Did draw either of these?
What'd you say?
Did either of you draw either of these images?
Oh no.
Wow.
No offense to either of you, but Apollo's face looks a little jacked up.
If I could draw either of them, I would be over the moon.
I just wanted to check before I roasted his face.
Before you roast.
Yeah, he looks.
Look at him.
Yeah,
He looks a little jacked up.
His lips are so high.
But so Apollo is the most Greek of all the gods, as he is often called. He's a total hippie. He plays the lyre. He is really good at archery again. He rides a chariot, and he stays close to the sun, so he's like a tan dude, all that. And he is...
He holds the sun around the world. Like, that's his job.
Yeah. And he's also closely associated with prophecy. Like oracles of Apollo, the Oracle of Delphi, all that kind of stuff.
That lady.
Yeah, crazy lady. You want to talk about her?
Yes, I want to talk about the Oracle of Delphi. Okay, so they're just these women who would go live in this temple and give these prophecies. And they would go into this back, like, earthy room of the temple. All the walls were earth. It was in a mountain. And then they would come out and they would give these, like, rambling, crazy prophecies to people. And, like, generals would go to this woman and they would ask her for advice on, like, wars. And then they would take it. And, like, historians went back and they went to, like, this back room of the temple of Delphi and stuff like that, and they like analyzed the air and stuff like that, and there was so much benzene gas in the air, like so much. So she was just back there like huffing benzos and then coming out and giving generals like advice on wars, which they would go lose. And she did this for like, well, not one person, but like these people who would like get like, appointed the Oracle of Delphi, would do this for like ages, over and over again. And there's so many wars that were lost because of this just high woman spouting nonsense. It's so good.
That is very interesting. I wonder how they became trusted in the first place.
Apollo, they were like, that's Apollo, he's speaking to me. And everyone was like, that tracks. I'm going to listen to you for everything always now.
I bet it's like they made a, few shots in the dark correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, okay, they're credible now. That is interesting, though. So, yeah. Is there anything else Apollo does?
He is also... Well, he's also closely associated with disease, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, everyone was blaming Apollo for the coronavirus for a while. Throughout the internet, people were like, it's your fault. And then he was like, I'm not real. And then,
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
But, yeah. So these guys, it's very common to see moon gods and sun gods. All of the Aztec gods could reasonably be called sun gods, except for, like, 2 of them. Actually, like, maybe 4. But, very common to see moon and sun gods. I actually don't know if the Aztecs have a moon god. I'll have to look that up. But that's Artemis and Apollo, the twins. Oh, okay, so real quick, the twin story about them, the Wonder Twins. So they needed a family bonding activity. So basically there was this woman named Niobe, and she was laughing about how she was able to have like 12 kids. She had 6 sons and 6 daughters. And she's like, look at me. I can procreate so good. These are my children. They're better than any. You know that woman. That woman at the parent teacher conference who's like, no, my child is perfect. This is God, right? You know, like that woman. That is Niobe. She with all of her 12 kids. So, she makes fun of the mother of Artemis and Apollo, and I forget her name right now, but Artemis and Apollo are like unwise. They're like unwise, ma'am. So they pull up to Niobe, and Apollo slaughters her 6 sons, and Artemis slaughters her 6 daughters. And Niobe wasn't too pleased about that, so she runs off to a mountain and promptly turns into a stone. As you do. But the moral of that story is
Can you still find that stone today?
With them. Yeah. It's
just like the other one.
Just like the other one. It's a landmark on Mount something or other. I believe that's the translated name. And
interesting.
Yeah, I'll figure out which one that is. But
yeah. Another Artemis story, just briefly, because we talked about it in our like planning session, was some hunter guy called like Archeon just like stumbled upon Artemis while she was naked, and she was not pleased about that, so she turned him into a deer and then made his hunting dogs attack him. So
yeah, that's
just interesting.
That's awful.
Yeah,
that's honestly, I don't know why that one gets me so bad. Out of a lot of the punishments that we've talked about, that one is bad, man.
Not great, no.
But
yeah, she's the hunt. She just enjoys the hunt. So the dogs just went and, you know, tore up that deer / person. So yeah, very interesting.
Once he was a deer, it's fair game. You know what I mean?
Once he's a deer, it's fair game.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
But now we go on over to Athena and Ares. Smart war.
The god of war and the god of strategic war.
Yep. Smart war and dumb war. Athena.
Winning wars.
Yeah, Ares is honestly like hated. Like, and that's not even like us today. I mean, like in Greece, he was not. You wouldn't really pray to Ares. Like, he's a central part in the story of Troy. Like the Iliad and stuff like that, but not in like a positive light. Like, it was said that like every death on the battlefield was decided by him. Like, anytime someone fell in battle, it was because Ares wrote it down in a notepad or like decided it, you know, stuff like that.
Wow, Death Note.
You want to win a war?
I like that.
Athena.
Yeah, you go to Athena. Because she's like, and again, it's like, it's almost like Prometheus and Epimetheus, where Athena is like the before thought, but Ares is kind of like the during thought. You know, it's like, now I'm here, I will wing it. So Athena, strategy, wise, very wise, has a lot of like artifacts with her. Like you see, she has her spear. She has that shield, which was used to defeat Medusa, which was used by Perseus to defeat Medusa. She carries Zeus's Aegis, I think is how you say it, which is his super powerful shield. Like, that thing can do some really weird things. And she also helps out a lot of heroes. She helped out Odysseus. She helped out Perseus. I'm sure there's others, but those are the two that come to my mind. But
she might have given Achilles some slight help in the Battle of Troy.
This may be true. I think so.
Or the Trojan War. I'm saying it wrong, but you know. Because she was very involved with that whole shebang.
Yeah, that whole debacle.
But yeah, I think it is a very interesting distinction here that Ares is like the destruction of war and Athena is the strategy of war. So Ares is like, you know, the destroyed landscape and the death, and destruction and just everything bad. But then Athena is like, ooh, intelligence, strategery, like basically anything that war buffs like
Yeah.
those people, like some people are really interested in like the history of war. They're interested in like Athena stuff, like, oh wow, all those strategies, so interesting. Whereas Ares is just like, not fun, not fun. You don't want to deal with Ares.
That's the other thing, is that the Olympians are supposed to be like beautiful. Like all of them are supposed to be incredibly beautiful, except for Hephaestus. But we'll get to him later. But the other exception, besides he who shall not be named until later, is Ares. Ares was never said to be beautiful. In fact, he was said to be somewhat ugly compared to the other gods, because like war was a sacred part of their culture, which is why they had two entire gods like designated towards it. But he was the ugly side of war. He was like the killing part of war. He was the violence part of war. Whereas Athena,
that one Wonder Woman movie.
yes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, he was like, that was interesting. Like literally just Ares was the villain of that movie.
That was a good. Did you enjoy that movie, Pluto?
I kind of liked
that
it.
movie, except the Hades bit, which scarred me.
That was nope, it didn't happen. Did not
It happened.
happen.
You made me watch this movie.
I forgot the last time I'd watched it.
I can't even remember this. This was such a long time ago.
You don't want to. Hades looks horrific, but
it's upsetting.
I remember it was like World War One, and like I remember the part where it's like
I think it was a little before World War One. I'm not gonna lie to you.
No. When they got
Wonder Woman
teleported to the present.
They didn't.
Wait.
What? I think we're thinking of different movies. Are you talking about like the Wonder?
Okay.
Wait, what?
Sorry,
They
which
were
movie are
fighting
you talking
like a war with
No,
Ares.
we're talking about the animated one.
Oh, okay. No, I'm talking about the live action
Yeah,
one.
no, I know exactly which one you're talking about.
A little while ago.
Yeah.
Where it's World War One.
Yeah, because
So you got
Ares was
Wonder
the villain
Woman.
in that one too. That's right.
Yeah, and Wonder Woman is in World War One, right? Somehow.
Yes.
I forget how it happened, but she's there, all right. And the villain is Ares, because what he did was like, he would basically just like find an inventor just like in their room or whatever, and like whisper to them, like, "Oh, you could make this destructive weapon. Oh, wouldn't that be cool?" And then they're like, "Who was that?" "Oh, whatever." And then they write
Must
it
have
down.
been the wind.
And like, yeah, exactly. And like, that is why World War One was destructive. Just Ares whispering to people. It was an interesting movie, but Ares was the villain, and so that was interesting.
Yeah. So yeah.
That was not the reference. I also think it's funny that he's regarded as one of the uglier gods because Aphrodite cheats on he who shall not be named until later with Ares.
Yes, he does.
Avidly.
Yeah, and he who should not be named until later, catches them because he literally throws a net on them as they're
Because they were using his
having
bed.
fun. They were, and he's like, "Hey, this is horrible," and he throws a net on them, and he brings them to Zeus, and he's like, "Look at this! What is this happening right here in this net?" And Zeus is like, "Oh," and I forget what the resolution to that one was, but yeah,
Something horrific.
Probably.
Aphrodite.
I don't remember who got a horrific something or other, but someone sure did, and I feel like it was probably Aphrodite.
Man, Aphrodite, she just goes for the not lookers, man. Ares and he who should not be named until later. Not models. Let's say that. But
I mean, he who shall not be named until later literally got chucked off a cliff because he was so ugly that his own mother was like, "What the hell is this?"
yeah, but that is smart war and bad war.
Yep.
There you go. Aphrodite and Hephaestus. Hephaestus is he who shall not be named. So Aphrodite is the goddess of beauty. This is the famous painting of Venus, which is the Roman equivalent to Aphrodite. Goddess of beauty, being pretty,
Love.
simpery, all that kind of stuff. And Hephaestus is the god of the forge, the god of fire, His Roman equivalent is Vulcan, I'm pretty sure, which is where we get the name Volcano from.
And Star Wars, Star Trek franchise.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was so ugly. He was so ugly. Like, it is debated whether he was a child of both Zeus and Hera, or just Hera alone. Some tellings say that because Zeus had Athena alone, because Athena just popped out of his head, he had a migraine, that Hera had Hephaestus alone, but some tellings make that impossible, because some tellings say that it was actually Hephaestus who helped Athena out of Zeus's head. So there's no way the two can be true. But whichever way you want to go, something went wrong, and now Hephaestus looks like that. And honestly, I like him. I do like him. He keeps to himself. He chills at his forge, and he makes literally god tier armor for heroes. He made Achilles his armor, like his really super buff armor, and
That did not save him.
well, because there was an overlooked design flaw that was built in, surrounding the heel area. But yeah, that was how he played into the Trojan War. But other than that, he wasn't like, I don't care who's right or wrong, I'm just gonna build armor and weapons. He's like, just that guy. But it's interesting.
Basically, America in like
is.
many world conflicts, just like I'm just here selling the weapons.
Yeah. It's interesting because these two are married. Aphrodite and Hephaestus are married. The goddess of beauty, the most beautiful. Well, I mean that is.
That was up for debate a few times, actually.
Yeah, with Paris, that was kind of what started the Trojan War.
Be careful where you step.
I would say that the goddess of beauty, it would probably be the most beautiful because no one knows better than her. That would be my logic. But if, like, with the offers...
I think many gods and goddesses are very pretty, and I think that I want to not be smote.
But I always found it interesting that, these two got together.
Because they were forced to.
Were they?
Yeah, that's like they were like, Aphrodite, stop seducing everyone. You know what we're gonna do? Get married to the ugliest motherfucker ever.
Do they have a happy marriage outside of Aphrodite cheating on him?
No!
No, they don't.
Because Aphrodite cheated on him.
Oh. That was kind of the deal breaker, I guess.
Bad news. Very sad. So here's a question.
Sure.
So you mentioned that Aphrodite related to like love in general, but also that Eros was another like god of love.
Yeah.
So are there like different gods of love, and like is it sort of like with war, like it's different types of love?
Absolutely.
Does that work?
Aphrodite is more like beauty and self-love. And like I guess like Eros is more like romantic love, whereas Aphrodite is more other types of love, and such. That's how I always interpreted it.
Yeah. We have some chat, by the way.
Oh, alrighty. Chat says, alright, Barry Rudin says, great topic, guys. Hi, Gravity Max, Sebastian, and Pluto.
Hello.
I loved mythology as a kid, but haven't paid attention to it in a long time. You guys put a lot of effort into this research. Nice job, all of you. And then One Punch Joe says, hey, with 4 E's.
Hey, Joe.
Hello.
Hello.
All right.
Yeah, so these two got together.
Not by choice.
Not by choice. And, I guess she has a thing for seashells. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing, is that she was said to either come from Zeus, possibly, or just came from the sea foam. Like, her birth is, like, one of the most mysterious out of all the Olympians. I like the sea foam.
No one knows where she came from. She just kind of, like, appeared from the ocean, was like, I'm pretty, suck it.
She just spawned.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, there we go.
But there you go.
I wonder if Poseidon had anything to do with it. it's from the sea, but
Perhaps.
sounds like there aren't really anything about that. Interesting. Anyway.
Hermes.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Mr. USPS, the Postal Service of ancient Greece. He is the messenger god. He's the quickest god. He is, that's, like Mercury is his Roman equivalent. That's why the first planet is named after him. He has those winged sandals. That's one of his most iconic things. He also has the winged helmet. And he has the caduceus, or the caduceus. I forget how you say it. There's like one or other. I think it actually might be caduceus, and it's very unfortunate that that's what it is. But I say caduceus.
And that's that staff that
sounds like something Jack Black would say.
Yes, it does.
Skadoosh. Yeah. That like staff thing. You'll see that on like hospitals, like medical places, which is interesting. Right? Like I wonder why that association is there.
Well, because he would bring like the souls of the dead to the underworld. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when an ambulance has that sign on it, it's basically saying good luck.
No promises. That's what the ambulance is saying.
That should be like the EMT's motto. No
promises. That's not a very
promising
encouraging
motto?
Yeah, not a very encouraging motto. No promises. True, but it's like anyway. Yeah, Hermes. Very interesting.
Hermes, and then there's like Hypnos, Thanatos, and one other Nos that are all in league with each other. Because like one puts you to sleep, the one makes you dream, and then one kills you.
Nice. Yeah, it is interesting with Hermes. Hermes plays a role in many Greek myths as literally just male service. Like he just delivers stuff for other gods. Like Athena is like, oh, go give this to Odysseus, and he's off, and he just gives it to Odysseus, whatever it was, right? And it's like, it's just kind of fascinating. Like I wonder why that role was necessary to carve out into these myths, because he could have just had like Athena go and hand it to him. So I wonder why that is. Are there any like really like Hermes centric myths that you guys know?
His birth myth is pretty cool because he's also the god of commerce as well as the thief god. He's also like the patron saint of thieves and of pickpockets.
Why do you need That's interesting.
Basically, his origin story is that he stole away all of these cows, I'm pretty sure it was, away from Apollo, I think. And Apollo was like going to beat the hell out of him, but then he like Hermes charmed him because Apollo like didn't believe that anyone could steal things away from him. So like he gave him a second chance.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah. Hermes, solid dude. Knows his duty. One hell of a delivery guy. Gotta say.
Yeah, he delivers souls to the underworld, so
yeah.
One would hope.
Whenever the Olympians get hungry, they definitely send him out on a food run.
Oh yeah.
He is also the patron saint of Uber Eats.
Yup.
But then we get on to Hestia.
I love her.
Yeah.
She's underrated.
I'd say so.
Yeah. They juked her out of her Olympian position.
They did. So goddess of the hearth, firstborn of Kronos and Rhea. So pretty powerful, and a lot of cities did have a shrine to her. There was this thing where like there was like a fire that started in I think it was Athens. And whenever they would set up a new city or a new settlement, they would have to light the torch in the Athens fire, which they kept burning forever, and then carry it all the way to the new city, and then light the fire there. So it's all the same fire. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool, I gotta say.
Yeah, Hestia is interesting because it's like the hearth and the home, right? So it's just like family, like good vibes, you know, cozy with the fire. It's just like it's like wholesome.
Yeah.
And now you're gonna tell me that like Hestia, like, you know, got very mad and like murdered a ton of people, but
No, she's primarily unproblematic, if I'm remembering.
She's pretty far removed from stuff. She's just like, hey, if you worship me, good things will happen. If you don't, I won't do anything necessarily bad to you, but I can't ensure that good things are going to happen to you. Which is a decent stance for a god, I gotta say.
Especially in comparison to, like, the rest of them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Where it's like, if you don't pray to Poseidon before you go out fishing, you're going to get murked by 1,000 things.
Yep. Yeah, no, I just like the image of Hestia with, like, warm slippers, right? Like cozy sweatpants, like a nice robe, right? A book, hot chocolate, and then the fire.
Yeah.
Perfect, like, winter day, right? That's Hestia.
She knows how to do it right,
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not a lot on her. Honestly, there isn't. We should make some myths about Hestia. Give her some clout.
The myth of the man who was too cozy. He refused to leave his sofa.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But so then we get into some notable stories, a lot of which we alluded to. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go, like, too in-depth.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on this.
This is probably going to be the meatiest section of them all, so the others will go a little faster. But the one on the left we talked about earlier, that is Perseus with the head of Medusa. It's a badass statue, I'm not even going to lie. I'm not even going to front. I know Medusa, like, it's a tragic situation. I feel for her. I do. The statue's badass.
It is a cool statue. I feel so horrible for her.
Yeah.
She did not deserve that.
Basically, Perseus got sent out by the tyrant who was ruling over his land.
I believe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And he told him as a wedding gift for his wedding ceremony, he needs to bring him the head of a Gorgon. And he expected Perseus to just go out and die, because Gorgons are immortal and will turn you to stone if they look at you.
That wasn't his wedding gift. That was just.
I thought it was. It was his wedding gift.
No, so like his mother's father was Acrisius, and then they put him in a box and just like sent him off.
Yes.
And then they ended up with Polydectes, and Polydectes had to do stuff. But Andromeda's father was not Polydectes.
No. I mean, it was Perseus. It was the guy that was getting married that sent him out. The thing was a wedding gift. Like, not for...
Oh, I thought you meant, like, to prove his worth for marrying Andromeda.
No.
I'm like, that's a whole different dad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dads in that story.
There is.
And they're all awful people.
Yeah.
Including Zeus.
Mm-hmm. Just another jab. But...
I'm annoyed. You know, I'm peeved. I recognize he's probably not real, and if he is, definitely still not, like, chilling up there. I have beef. You know, if Star Trek has anything to say about it, he's, like, long gone. But,
that's true.
But
that was so strange. I would highly recommend it. But
yeah, there's an episode of Star Trek where they meet Apollo, and they claim that all the Greek gods were aliens.
I like that. That just sounds like History Channel at 3 a.m.
Yeah, I walk downstairs, and my dad's watching Ancient Aliens, and he turns to me.
Oh, no.
UFOs. I'm like, that's what unidentified means. And then I go back.
But Perseus is sent out to get the head of a Gorgon, and he's like, how am I going to do this? But thankfully, Athena and Hermes pull up. They give him the most OP gear. Athena...
And Hades.
Hades?
The helmet was Hades.
I thought the helmet was also just Hermes.
No, the helmet was from Hades, because it wasn't the winged helmet. It was the invisibility helmet.
It was the invisibility cap, yeah.
Yeah, that's from Hades.
Yeah, that's right. So he gets all these three gods to help him out. I mean, What a
You're gonna learn
task
so much
force.
about this myth if you intend on helping me with my Latin homework. You don't even.
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's honestly the dream team. Athena, Hades, and Hermes. Because
The most unproblematic.
if you really mess up, Hermes and Hades will just bring you right back. But, so he gets the invisibility helmet, he gets winged sandals that allow him to zip away really fast, and he gets a very reflective shield, and that's how he can look at Gorgons through the reflection without looking at them head on and turning to stone. Athena,
And give him a sword that was sharp.
yes, that would be able to cut the skin of a Gorgon. So Athena identifies which one was Medusa because she was the only one that wasn't born a Gorgon, which means that she wasn't immortal. And Athena obviously knows which one she is, considering it's her fault that she. But so she points him out. Invisibility cap on, sandals equipped, sword out, shield reflective, and he goes in and chops off Medusa's head, grabs it, throws it in a bag, and runs away. Yeah, didn't he also get a purse to put Medusa's head in? I think that was also
kind of like a satchel type deal.
So he brought the Gucci bag to the quest. And then along the way back, he finds Andromeda, who is chained to a rock and is about to be sacrificed to a sea beast. And he uses Medusa's head to turn the beast into stone, and then marries Andromeda, and then returns back, and then kills the tyrant and makes his other dad the ruler of the land. And he wasn't a tyrant. The other one, up there, the orange, like, mural thing, that is Theseus versus the Minotaur. Theseus had this whole entire other story, but the most famous part of it is him fighting the Minotaur. The Minotaur was loose in this labyrinth that was created and was causing issues, and no one ever really got out of the labyrinth, and the Minotaur was this crazy half-man, half-bull beast. And Theseus was told to go in there to, like, prove himself or something. I think he was sent by his dad or something. Or he was just doing it because he was a mad lad. He killed a lot of monsters. I think out of anyone, Theseus has the highest number of monster kills, second to maybe only Hercules. So he is about to go in the labyrinth, but he won the favor of Ariadne, who gives him wool, so that as he's going through the labyrinth, he can spin the wool so he can find his way back. And then he comes upon the Minotaur, and it's, in some myths, it says that he just kind of beats it to death with his bare hands, and then leaves via the wool. Then he abandons Ariadne, and it was never clear why he did that. But later, Ariadne actually hooked up with Dionysus, I'm pretty sure. So after Theseus, she's like, well, what am I going to do now? That was hubby. You know, he's gone. Dionysus pulls up, and he's like, want some wine?
Party time.
Yeah, party time. All that. Theseus is really interesting because he's like the most noble of all of the Greek heroes. He fought very respectfully in war. He was a very smart leader, and he was buried with all the highest honors as if he were a demigod, which I don't think he was. I think he was mortal, which was, like, strange considering how good he was at stuff. So he's probably the most powerful human. Like, Odysseus is probably the smartest, or at least most cunning. Theseus is probably the most, like, he has the most prowess with, like, strength, or, like, I guess just bravery, to be honest, for just a normal human. So that's inspiring. But then you get Prometheus down at the bottom, and he's like, shh, I'm bringing fire over to the humans. Zeus didn't want the humans to have fire. He didn't want the humans to have a lot of things. But Prometheus is really, like, a benefactor to humans, to be honest. Like, he did a lot, even, like, just creating us in the first place. But basically, he steals fire from the gods, gives it to man so man doesn't freeze to death, because he was like, I just made you, I don't want this to go south. So Zeus finds out and he's like, that's not what you were supposed to do. Now you get to be chained to a rock, and eagles are going to rip out and eat your liver every day. And guess what? Your immortal
And
says?
it regenerates every day.
It's going to regenerate, and you're going to have to do it all again, once more from the top, every single day, because you brought fire to man, and you weren't completely evil. I like Prometheus, man. He's a good guy.
Yep. Something I find interesting is that a story becomes more horrific if you just simply add more details. I said this to you yesterday, Sebastian. Like, the detail that it's specifically his liver, like, it just makes it so much worse. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like, if it were just a general, like, oh, the birds will eat him every day, you can sort of like, okay, whatever. But it's like, no, they will peck out his liver. It's like, ugh, poor Prometheus.
Yeah. But, yeah. So, again, if you want to look more into the stories, I would recommend looking more into Theseus, because there's a lot there. He encounters a lot of iconic monsters. Pretty prolific guy. But then some notable motifs, a lot of which we've just hit on. There's always the folly of man motif, which is Pandora's box, which was given to her again by Prometheus. Pandora's given this box, and it's like, has everything evil in it. And Zeus, I think it was like a trap by Zeus. He's like, humans are dumb, they're gonna open this box, and they're gonna unleash everything evil, because I'm evil. So Pandora did, and she's like, I wonder, but, everything comes out, but she closes it before hope escapes. And so humanity was able to hold on to hope, as everything else evil was allowed to escape.
That's kind of like the 7 deadly sins of like Greek mythology, essentially.
Yeah. And then the other notable motif is that, the 3 most powerful gods are all dudes. Like, Greece was a patriarchal society. Women did not have, equal rights and stuff, and that was codified into their mythology. That's in a lot of different mythologies, a lot of them. But, like a vast majority, which sucks. But, they attribute the most powerful forces to men, and jobs they believed like women should have, like being responsible for, crops and stuff like that. That was deferred over to Demeter, and all that kind of stuff.
But they do have like the hunt and strategic war, and
they do. So they were definitely better at it than most, but it is still like a reflection of the mindset at the time.
Yeah.
I would say it's more reflected in like the stories themselves than like the distribution of the gods.
In the Odyssey, when Odysseus gets back and sees all these women who've been violated, well, time to die, and just kills all of them because, yeah.
Yeah, or like the fact that Zeus is able to do whatever the hell he wants to women.
Yeah.
So you get all that. But these are just the Roman equivalents. The downgrade of... That's exactly what I was going to say. That is exactly what I was going to say. Such a downgrade. Vulcan is a badass
Look at all these
name,
planets.
not going to lie.
Oh, yeah, it's interesting. Vulcan, at one point, basically there's Mercury's orbit doesn't behave according to Newtonian mechanics, right? And Einstein basically explained that with general relativity, like, this is why that's wrong. But before Einstein, one of the other theories was that, there's actually another planet within the orbit of Mercury, and that planet is what's messing up Mercury's orbit. It's not that Newton's wrong, right? And anyway, the proposed name for that planet was Vulcan, which is interesting. It just sort of fits with that. Because it would be obviously incredibly hot if it were there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think Mercury's close to the sun. And yeah. But yeah, I just love these. That all the names are related and like interesting and make sense. Like Mercury is fast, so it's Hermes. Venus is beautiful because it's like the brightest. And so Aphrodite. Mars, red,
Yep.
blood red, war creates blood, Aries. It's good. I like it.
You got
I
it,
like
man. You
I
got
like
bingo. But
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
so that's Greek myth. A lot there. It's awesome. I love it. It's really cool. And that's the lambs section. Lambs were very important to Greek society, sacred animals to some. So those were the lambs. Now let's get into the dams, which is Aztec myth. Buckle in. This is going to be the fastest section, and we can speed up for time related purposes. As my camera goes completely blurry. Hello, but
autofocus decides not to do its job.
Aztec myth, strap in. The Aztecs were an ancient society that lived in Mexico, in the southernmost point
southern
of
Mexico. Was it Oaxaca? I don't know how to pronounce it.
In the state of Oaxaca.
Yeah.
But they were wiped out by the Spanish
Well,
Inquisition.
they were in some parts of South America as well, like Peru.
Well, those were the Incas.
That would be Inca. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So specifically, the Aztecs. Sorry. I met with Aztec expert, and by that I mean he did a project in 4th grade. Zach Bishop, he's been on. He gave me some pointers. I'm just gonna bring some of the the phonetics up so I don't mispronounce these names.
Oh yeah.
And they don't rip out my soul, which they probably could. But yeah, so getting into it, their creation myth is interesting, and that's why I wanted to bring up the 5 cycles of the Greek myth, because the Aztecs actually have the same idea. The cycles are instead the changing of the sun god, or the god that controls the sun. There is one sun god, but he's never in control of the sun. How a god becomes in control of the sun is they actually have to throw themselves onto a fire and sacrifice themselves. Sacrifice is the overarching idea in Aztec society. Sacrifices were done almost every day. If they had just come off of a conflict, they would sacrifice the war prisoners. If they didn't have war prisoners to sacrifice, they would sacrifice the weak. If they didn't have weak to sacrifice, they would sacrifice children. It was horrible, but they were doing sacrifices every day to appease these gods, who are arguably the most evil gods in any mythology ever. So
interesting. Yeah, and it is interesting with the position of sun god, right? So you can think of the true sun god as the equivalent of Helios in Greek, and then instead of having an Apollo, it's the different gods are fighting for the position of Apollo, and at different times they have that position, right?
Mm-hmm. So there were 4 previous cycles of the god that was in charge of the sun. The first one is the here I had the pronunciation up. The first one I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. Tezcatlipoca.
Yeah, I have it in the speaker notes.
Oh, thank you. All of that. That was the first god of the sun. That was the first cycle of the sun, which was called the 4 Tiger era, and that lasted 676 years, because Mayans counted things in sets of 52 years. So 676 is 13 52-year cycles. So it lasted, 13.
Is there any reasoning for that?
Well, I can think 52 is the number of weeks in a year. So I imagine they just sort of extrapolated that arbitrarily. Because why is 100 a century, right? It's just arbitrary.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is Interesting. And then 13, I guess, would be the number of weeks in a season, because it's
Yeah, I guess so.
13 times 4 is 52. So,
Yeah.
but wait, did they have weeks, like 7-day weeks?
I don't know. They were pretty
Because then if
advanced.
they didn't, I don't know.
They were pretty advanced. Like, and that's the thing. That's why, we called these guys dams. They had incredible irrigation systems. Like the Roman Empire had also really nice irrigation systems and stuff. But they built that with steel tools. The Aztecs did it with wood and clay. They were able to build things to almost like the same standard. And their capital city,
Tenochtitlan, they had floating agriculture like on this lake. So they would just have like a floating piece of land. Yeah, it's like crazy. It's like interesting.
Yeah, their architecture was insane for the time. So the first cycle was Tezcatlipoca, who sacrificed himself. And that was the first cycle, and that was inhabited by giants who ate only acorns and came to an end when the giants were devoured by jaguars. So you get all of that, and then the second sun is governed by Quetzalcoatl, which I've heard is the correct pronunciation. And that is probably the most well-known Aztec god. He is one of the most evil of the Aztec gods.
Really?
He is one of the ones that is said that, like, all of them, if you don't give them sacrifices, bad things will happen. But with Quetzalcoatl, it's more like, if you don't give him sacrifices, he will end the world. Like, the rain god, Tlaloc, if you don't give him sacrifices, you won't get rain. If you don't, give whatever to the fertility goddess, you're not going to get kids. If you don't give stuff to Quetzalcoatl, you're not getting life. It's over. It's game.
Interesting. Yeah, I always thought I did not have that image of Quetzalcoatl because I just associate him with the axolotl, and they're so wholesome and cute. Just little like salamander things. So, wow.
So the governance of Quetzalcoatl was the Four Wind era, and then the next one is Tlaloc, which is the rain god. That was the Four Rain sun, and then this other one, that is such a name,
Chalchihuitlique.
Yeah.
Chalchihuitlique.
Yeah.
Lique. So it's like a tongue twister a little bit. Chalchihuitlique.
Yeah, all that. She is fertility god, I'm pretty sure, one of them. And this was humans, actually. But at the end of it, there was a flood, which is why this was called the Four Water Cycle. And this cycle also lasted for 676 years. And now we are in the fifth cycle right now. And we are currently in the Four Movement Sun, which is governed by Tonatiuh. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. Tonatiuh, I think. But basically that cyclical nature, that's the main takeaway from that. Mm-hmm. So going into the first god that we mentioned, Tezcatlipoca, this is the second most famous god, because this is the number one on-site beef with Quetzalcoatl. These guys hate each other. Like, all the stories about them, they are usually just, like, at each other's throats. They are just, like, they just do not like each other. You have to sacrifice things to him, or else bad things will happen. He was specifically the god of, like, providence, but more specifically, he's associated with night. So he's associated with, like, the moon and, like, nighttime and all that kind of stuff. Stuff like that. His stone was, like, obsidian, stuff like that. And he beefed with Quetzalcoatl a lot. He himself was not a great guy, and we'll get into why a little later. But it's just interesting to kind of see I like these depictions of him. The one on the right is probably like the most accurate depiction of him, unfortunately, because that is the I'm sure he was also somewhat associated with death, being the god of night. Usually there is a combination of the two, but that's what you get. Next one, Quetzalcoatl, the quote-unquote feathered serpent. Most well-known evil trickster. Like, during a couple of the other gods' reigns over the sun, what he would do is he would just create fire and ash, and he actually ended one of the reigns early, when during the Four Rains Sun, when Tlaloc was in charge, Quetzalcoatl made it rain fire and ashes and turned the humans that were there into turkeys, butterflies, or dogs. And he cut that one short. That only lasted 7 cycles, which was 364 years. So, he is seen as probably the most evil out of all of them, because he's directly responsible for the end of the world if you don't sacrifice to him. He's the Aztec god of wind, air, and learning, which is interesting, because you would think he would be more attributed to, like, other things that are typically seen as evil, but he is, the most evil, quote-unquote, of the deities. Again, the motif of, like, wind or, like, storm being incredibly powerful, that's what we get here, and all of that. Pluto, if your nose is bleeding, you can, like, run to get a tissue. I just saw that, I'm sorry. But yeah, so this one definitely demanded a lot of sacrifices. Next one, Tlaloc, rain god, responsible for floods, responsible for water. Definitely very important, as agriculture was super important to the Aztec people. He is horrifying. Let's get that out there. He is absolutely horrifying, because, and we'll get into this a little later towards the stories or the motifs, but he is basically, people were incentivized to sacrifice children to him, because what was supposed to happen was it was the tears of whoever you sacrificed that would work as a sacrifice to him, because, like, water, rain. And in the mythology, he likes children tears the best. Is that not the most horrific thing ever? So
These, oh my gosh, they're very...
Yeah, so another central deity, terrifying. Then we get into Chalchithuitliqui, who I'm pretty sure was a fertility goddess, or having something to do with nature. Bring it up. Water, rivers, sea streams, storms, and baptism. So, storm god, again. Yeah, she's associated with fertility and is the patroness of childbirth. All of that kind of stuff. She is the sister of Tlaloc, I am pretty sure.
Sorry about that.
Yes. It's all good.
Problem.
Don't worry about it. She is the sister and wife of Tlaloc. And
yeah, as always.
As always. And she was the ruler of the Fourth Era. So again, you would pray to this one before you would have a kid, or you would sacrifice to this one before you had a kid, all of that kind of stuff. And then the one we're currently on, Tonatiuh, I think. I love that art over there, because that's like the Mexican flag, right? The
Oh no, that
colors.
was Tezcatlipoca.
Oh right, that was the other one.
The red, white, and green.
Right. But yeah, that's the
Yeah.
one that we're currently in, and that's who is actually depicted on that calendar to the right. That's a calendar. That's what's at the center is Tonatiuh. And
Hmm.
Tonatiuh is the is the current sun god, but I'm not sure if he's responsible for much else. He's also associated with fertility, and he's the patron of all Aztec warriors.
Interesting. So I have a question, right?
Mhm.
So the sun cycles really they last like 676 years, right?
Yes.
So how many years are we into this sun cycle?
Well,
And like,
I think
does that mean the end of the world is coming?
wasn't that why 2012 was supposed to be the
Was
end
that
of the world?
2012?
I'm pretty sure it was.
Interesting. Well, wait. 2012 was the Mayans, right? This is the Aztec.
You're right. I don't know. We could figure that out. But specifically, you would have to sacrifice the hearts to Tonatiuh because you would always sacrifice the heart to whoever was the sun god, like the El Jefe del Sol at the time. But there you go. All right, and then you get Huitzilopochtli. There you go. I definitely don't want to mess this guy up. He is. Oh, there are so many things that are just awful about him. Like, if you just Google, if you can even survive till the end of that word, Huitzilopochtli stories, it's just him doing the worst things. Like, he had 401 siblings, which he killed them all with, and that's what's on the left there. That's him killing his siblings with a flaming serpent sword and a other dragon serpent thing. He is the ultimate sun god. Like, he is the equivalent of Helios, and he is the patron saint of all Aztecs. Like, women, children, everyone. It's Huitzilopochtli. You always have to sacrifice to him, or else you're getting got, man. He is probably one of the most powerful, I'd say. It'd be him, who's the other guy? Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl would probably be the three most powerful. So, some notable stories of him. That's the one on the left is exactly what I was talking about before, about how Tlaloc likes the tears of whoever is being sacrificed to him, but boy oh boy, doesn't he love some children tears the best. He literally incentivized children, like child sacrifice. I don't see the gain from that. It's almost like the opposite of the Greek myth, which was like prioritizing the younger generation. This is almost doing the opposite. So that makes Tlaloc out to be frightening.
Why was like the mythology so centered around sacrifice?
I'm not sure. That's just like what they did. Like if you got to a certain age, they would just sacrifice you. Like I think that was probably around
like in Logan's Run.
Yeah.
You know that movie?
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
It's like you turn 30, right? And like everyone has like, I don't know, like a red like gem or something like embedded in their skin, and when you turn 30 it like glows and then they kill you. It's like this.
They take the old people and they're like
Yes. Yeah. Okay, but the other story that we have up here, those two guys. All right, hold on. How do you pronounce this? Okay, pronounce. Okay. So the one on the left there is called, oh my god, Britannica. Can you not? That's the okay, so that's goddess of beauty, also associated with fertility, but she is most closely associated with flowers and springtime. She's also called Ichpotli, which is easier to say, but she's also called Xochiquetzal, which is what I'm gonna say, or Wochiquetzal, because it's derived from like around like Spanish intonations, I guess, and if like Oaxaca, the X is like a W. So Wochiquetzal is the fertility, beauty, love goddess, but also associated with flowers and springtime and being a maiden and a young woman. And the one on the right is a depiction of Tekatzlipoca, who is the guy of the night sky of associated with death, obsidian, all that kind of stuff. And what he did was he kidnapped Wochiquetzal, and he brought her down to his domain and forcibly copulated with her, and then let her run off. So kind of similar to the Hades and Persephone myth, if you think about it, because you have the spring goddess being taken away by the death god, and
interesting.
it's interesting.
Yeah, because they never interacted.
They never did. It's really interesting to see that happen.
Yeah.
But so some notable motifs are the gods are the worst things ever. There's literally not one good god. Every single god in the Aztec religion you had to sacrifice for. Like, sure, you could pray, you could sit down and like say, "Pretty please, can I?" But you have to sacrifice things for them. They demand blood, blood god, blood for the blood god. That's what you need. You gotta give hearts to them. All that. Sacrifice the child for the rains. All that kind of stuff. Mexico.
Destroy the child.
Destroy the child. Mexico was a whack place when the Aztecs were in there. But they were so well developed, which was the thing. Like, they had architectural institutions that wouldn't come around until the Renaissance era in Europe. So it's really weird to see. But again, they were wiped out by Christianity with the Spanish Inquisition. Hernan Cortez came over on his boats and destroyed the Aztecs because he had steel. He had the guns, germs, and steel. I don't know if he had guns. He had probably
He definitely had guns.
Prototypes.
You would not go anywhere without your guns. Come on.
Well, I mean, prototypes of guns. He probably had
the
a hand
1500s equivalent. Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's what I mean. But it's just notable that all the gods suck. I'm going to be murdered in my sleep tonight by a tribal deity.
Yeah, exactly.
But then we get into the last part, Norse mythology. It's badass. It comes from Scandinavia, again, almost pushed to complete annihilation by Christianity. The only reason we know anything about Norse mythology is because it survived in Iceland. And if you think about it, it just takes a long time to kind of get to Iceland from England, which was the main perpetrator of this kind of stuff, of spreading the Christianity through Scandinavia. So because of that, monks were able to transcribe things into massive books. You also have the Kalevala, I think is what it's called, which is its own thing. It's not associated with Norse myth. It's the Finnish myth, but that also survived because some monks were able to hide it. That one's crazy. The entire world was an egg because it was laid by a duck or something. The Finns, they're having fun. Megaduck. I believe in Megaduck supremacy. But
Megaduck theory.
Yeah. So Norse myth, really cool. It was just in God of War 4. It's also, around the Norway, Sweden area.
An Assassin's Creed game of it too.
Yes. Assassin's Creed
I've heard it was
Valhalla.
And of course it's featured in Marvel, all the
of course, yeah.
Thor related things
in there.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah, Marvel got Norse myth, DC got Greek myth. But there you go.
They both did horrible.
They both fumbled. I gotta say, both fumbled hard.
Yeah.
Only one who did it well is Disney with Hercules.
I think you mean Hercules, but anyways.
Choke up on your mic when you say that. That is horrific.
So the creation myth of the Norse mythology is all traced to this guy named Ymir. And basically, there are different realms. There are 9 realms, all connected by a single tree, the Yggdrasil, which is called the World Tree. And each of its branches connects different planes of reality. And where we live is Midgard, in the middle. And then where the gods live is Valhalla. Or, no, where the gods live is Asgard. Where the honored warriors go is Valhalla. But the first 2 realms to exist were Muspelheim on the right, which was the land of fire and brimstone, and it was hot and nasty and all that kind of stuff, and humid. And then the one on the left, Niflheim, which is the realm of mist and ice, and it's incredibly cold. It's actually colder than hell, which is interesting to think about. So you get those 2, and basically the fog from Niflheim combines with the steam from Muspelheim, and they combine together to create Ymir, this incredibly large being. And from Ymir, he is so big that just from him doing anything, things are able to be born from him. Humans were born from... humans weren't born from him, they were born later. But gods were born, I think, from his armpit. Cyclops came from his ribs, stuff like that. Like, he sweat out different beings, all that kind of stuff. But from him came a lot of different deities, notably Odin, and his 2 brothers, Vili and Ve. So basically they see that Ymir is sometimes characterized to be an evil being, like consciously evil, but a lot of others just say that he was just so big he didn't know what he was doing. So Odin, Vili, and Ve see that he is inadvertently or inadvertently creating all of these evil things. So they team up and they murder him, and they use his body parts to create Earth. Every drop of water on Earth is his blood, his thoughts are the clouds, his bones are the mountains, his eye, so it's Odin's eye that is the moon. I don't know what happened to his eyes, but all of that
Probably
kind
in the
of stuff.
fight.
Yeah. All that kind of stuff. It's all Ymir. He was as big as the world, or he at least was able to be folded into the world. All that kind of stuff. But after that, Odin, Vili, and Ve team up to create the first human from driftwood. It was I believe man was created by oak, and the first woman was created from a bit of ash wood, I think, and those were their first names. And it kind of relates to Adam and Eve. No, it was elm and ash, because instead of Adam and Eve, and all of that kind of stuff. So you get all of that, and basically they all had a different job. Like, I think Vili shaped it, Ve gave it thought, or Odin gave it thought, and then Ve breathed the life into it, but they were all responsible for it in one or another. So you get another motif of 3 brothers there, similar to Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus. But Odin ends up becoming the most powerful. So this is just
something interesting about Norse mythology is that in English we get some days of the week.
Yes, we do.
From Norse mythology. I think it's Wednesday is Woden's Day, or Odin's Day. Thursday is Thor. Friday, I imagine, is Frigg, right?
I think so.
And then Tuesday is something. I forget what Tuesday was. But they're all... It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are from Norse mythology, and then Saturday, Sunday, and Monday... Well, Saturday's from Roman/Greek, but Roman for Saturn. And then Sunday and Monday are just sun and moon. But
yeah. So I just looked it up really quick. It was Ash and Elm. And then the first two were named Ask and Embla. So that's the Adam and Eve of Norse mythology. So this is just some concept art of Ymir. Frost giants were born from him, which are like on-site beef with the Norse gods. They're supposed to fight against each other in Ragnarok, which is the epic final battle between the forces of good and the forces of evil. And the forces of evil are actually supposed to win and kill pretty much everything. And the universe kind of restarts, or at least like the Asgard plane does. And I believe Thor's sons are supposed to take over after everyone else has been killed. Whose names are, I think they start with M's. I can't remember right now, but Magni and Modi, I think that might be their names. But yeah, so Ymir has been depicted as just a giant frost giant because he's also the father of them, but he's also the father of gods. And he was killed on the left. You can see the three brothers, Odin, Vili, and Ve, about to rock his stuff. But then, yeah, we get over to Odin, who associated with storms, associated with a lot of stuff, as is Thor. But he is, again, close to omnipotent. He has his crows, or I think they're crows, that are like that serve as his eyes around the world. He lost his eye, so he's always depicted as only having one eye. His other eye became the moon. And he has two dogs. I forget what their names are, but he is the god king. So he's the ruler of all the other gods. Supposed to be the wisest and all that kind of stuff. But he's also depicted as kind of being a little old, which is a little strange, because like Zeus and those other guys are depicted as being like really buff guys in like their 30s at best, and Odin is depicted as being a much older man. But
I bet age is associated with wisdom in a lot of it.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole respect your elders thing that was big in like Viking culture, all that. But yeah, I don't think it was like the Norse gods do not get involved with humans as much as the Greek gods did. So Odin is just pretty far removed from it all, and he just chills in Asgard. And it's kind of sad because they all know that Ragnarok is coming, that they are eventually going to die, and it's theorized that humans are, also eventually going to die. So the Norse knew that, and because of that, they made the gods eventually going to die. Even though they made them like immortal, they still, made an existential crisis for them. So it's said that the gods kind of just sit around Asgard, kind of like Odin is in the second one, just like waiting to die, which is pretty grim. But you get all that.
Makes sense with like so high up north, it's like just cold and like dreary, and so I feel like it sort of imprints on that. Like it's like
yeah. But, that's Odin. Over on to the most well-known, Thor. He has a hammer.
Yep.
He's a himbo. Am I wrong?
You are not wrong. Do you care to explain what a himbo is to our audience?
You guys know what a bimbo is? I'm assuming it's a dumb, pretty woman. So a himbo is a male bimbo. So Thor is just a dumb, beefy boy who's an idiot, canonically. Not just in, like, Marvel stuff. Like, within Norse mythology, he was written to be dumb. Like, he dressed up as a woman to pretend to get married to some random giant, and then he was like, surprise, I'm Thor! I'll beat you. a himbo. That's just what he does. He just walks around and is stupid.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's this other. Sorry, what did you say?
And I respect it.
Yes.
Mm.
There's this other story about him, about how Loki disguised his son, Jormungandr, also known as the World Serpent, as a cat. And he was like, "Hey, Thor, you really think you're so tough? You think you're so powerful? Why don't you lift that cat?" And Thor is like, "Ha, you think so little of me?" And he's struggling so hard to lift this cat, and it doesn't once cross his mind that Loki is literally the trickster god, like known for just pulling japes and messing with people. And he's like, "Wow, I must have gotten really weak," as he's like literally his feet go through the floor. He is pushing so hard on this cat, and he's only able to lift one paw of this cat off the ground, which is insane considering it is a snake that goes around the world. So that is at least a couple trillion tons, and he's able to lift a quarter of it. So yeah, he's pretty strong. He's pretty buff. He is the direct competitor to the Frost Giants. Anytime there are Frost Giants around, it's Thor coming to whap them away. Anytime some intruder comes to Asgard, they sick Thor on him. Bam, boom, done.
And they set him from his little room, and then he just runs them up, and then they give him a dog treat, and they put him back.
Yeah.
And so the hammer Mjolnir, what is the significance of it? I mean, that's obviously in Marvel, it's very important, but is it actually as important in the myth?
It is, and it's a really interesting myth on how it was created. There were two brothers, I forget their names, but they were both forge masters, and Thor, they basically had to appease the gods, and the gods would let them stay, or they would pay them a ridiculous amount of money. And they were these two brothers, both of them were really skilled at the forge, and Thor was like, "I need a weapon, I need something that's portable and all that," and they were like, "Okay, I got you." So they were going to make him a hammer, but it was actually going to be a two-handed hammer. But Loki hears of this, and he's like, I don't want that guy lugging around a two-handed hammer, because that's going to have my name written all over it. So basically, to operate the forge, one guy has to be there, hammering away at what would become Thor's hammer, and the other guy has to be there using the bellows. So what would happen is that basically the two of them had to be in perfect harmony to be able to create the perfect hammer, which they wanted to do. And what Loki did is that to mess up their concentration, he turned into a fly and would fly into their eyes and literally bite their eyelids and stuff. And it was horrible. But they stayed strong through it as his face is getting messed up. Neil Gaiman has a funny take on this as well in his book. His brother keeps coming back inside. And he's like, "What is wrong with your eye, dude?" And he's like, "We can't stop now." So Loki is just biting away at these guys. But eventually one of them messes up. And that's why the hammer is one-handed. And all that stuff. And they give it to Thor, and he's like, "Why is it one-handed?" And they're like, "So you can port it around if it's in your pocket. It's the new model. Everyone likes it. It's great around here. It's got great reviews." And he's like, "Works for me." And he's like, yeah, he is. He's just like, "Let's test it," and beats a frost giant into literal atoms. And he's like, "Works for me." So yeah, that's Thor. We love him.
He looks so dorky in that photo, or that drawing on the right.
Yeah, he does. And he's
the fathers of the Scottish people from Brave. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yes, he does. And yeah, that's because of the red hair. He's seen as the god most closely associated with red. He has red hair and all that. But over on to Loki, the shape-shifting trickster god. So, he's known for being a bastard. He is the trickster. The thing in the middle is one of my favorite stories of him, but I think I threw that on the story side, so we'll talk about it there. But basically in that story, he just tricked a thing so that he's not the main perpetrator of the bad thing that happened, but so that he could frame someone else for it. And, you know, he's known for shape-shifting. He's known for always just throwing a wrench into the mechanism. On the right there is him with two of his children, Jormungandr, the world serpent, and Fenrir, the most powerful wolf ever. And it's interesting, pay attention to the chains around Fenrir. The myth about him is that, you know, I forget who the mother or possibly father of Fenrir was, because sometimes Loki, because he can shapeshift, is the mother of things, like such as Sleipnir, which is Odin's six-legged horse. So I don't know who the other parent of Fenrir is, but Fenrir started off as like a cub, but it kept like growing and growing, but it was really associated with the next guy we're talking about. Yes, which is Tyr. And it's interesting to see the dynamic that the two have. But basically, Fenrir just kept breaking out of any chains that they would chain him in, you know? And that was his thing. But, so Loki is strangely responsible for a lot of the other creatures out in the world because he gets around, man. Like, he has a lot of kids. But he is present in a lot of myths. Anytime something goes awry, it's Loki. He's behind the scenes.
He's the Zeus of, like, idiocy in Norse mythology.
Yeah, he just, like, messes things up just for the fun of it. It's pretty interesting. Like, he's not even vengeful, like, in Greek mythology. It's all about revenge and, like, whatever, and disrespect. Loki's just like, oh, it's fun. It's fun to mess with people.
Yeah. So, next up, exactly who I was talking about, Tyr. He raised Fenrir. He's also known for doing a lot of other stuff, but this is what he's most known for, is his relationship with Fenrir. And basically, Fenrir got to a point where, like, nothing would satisfy him or stuff like that, so they had to, like, keep chaining him, but he kept breaking out of the chains and all that stuff. And on Ragnarok, he's supposed to break out of his chains once again. Eventually, they found something that could hold him, and it had something to do with Tyr sacrificing his hand, which is what you see in both of those. Like, Fenrir, like, was, like, doing something. They needed to calm him down or something. It was something along those lines. And he hated everyone except for Tyr, because Tyr is who raised him. So Tyr was the only guy that could get anywhere near this thing, and he sacrificed his hand to, like, calm him down or to help trap him. I think that's what it was. Like, he distracted Fenrir with his hand so that they were able to chain him with the new chains that were created, I think, also by those two guys that made Thor's hammer. But he's chained up for now. But Ragnarok comes, he's supposed to snap out of him again and charge Asgard. But, you know, that's clout. That's bravery, with Tyr just kind of being like, here, nosh, as the other guys go at it. But, you know, Fenrir is just a badass name, too.
Yeah.
And then we get Hel, also known as Hela. She's also, like, obviously she is the ruler of Hell, of the Hell realm, so ruler of the dead, of the underworld, stuff like that. But she's also a deal maker. Like, in a lot of these stories, she's making deals with people. She's like, oh, you want him back? Here's the deal, you know, stuff like that. But she's pretty interesting. I'm not sure what her relation to Loki is, but they're often seen together. Hel and Loki relationship. Yeah. So Hel is the daughter of Loki, which is why I think she was actually the third figure in the other thing with Loki on it in the back there, the green lady. I think that might be her. So, child of Loki, and ruler of the underworld. A lot of things are associated with her. All the usual things are associated with death. All the creepy crawlies. That's her. Cool art. I really like the art in the middle. That's nice. Yeah. That's cool. Nice, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the wolf whose name I've already forgotten in the background.
It's probably not.
Fenrir?
It's probably not Fenrir. The only possibility I would see that it might be is because they are, at least half siblings, the two of them. But I don't think Fenrir ever actually died or went to Hell. But Hela is seen as pretty powerful, considering she's the sole person for, like, death. Like, they didn't break it up like they did in Greece with, like, dying and death and the dead. It was just Hela is the administrator. So, you get all that. A lot of cool myths about her. She's very well done, I have to say. And then we get into Freya, who...
Yes, Cat Chariot!
Cat Chariot. She's also the leader of the Valkyries, which are the, like, badass warrior chicks that help take fallen soldiers up to Valhalla. Like, that's another thing, actually. If we go back to Hell real quick, not talking about a trip to New Jersey, but to the Hell slide, the thing about how her entire domain, again, isn't divided into, oh, like, this is middle, this is bad. It's like everyone's, like, kind of in the same place. I'm sure there are, like, separate corners for, like, the baddest of the bad, but it's really all just one spot. But the thing is that dying of old age sends you to Hell. Like, the only way you can get to Valhalla, even if you are like a monk and you do nothing but good things, if you don't die in combat, you are going to Hell. Like, the only way you get to Valhalla is if you fall in combat. You can't die of illness, you can't just be sick, all of that kind of stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, that is interesting, because that sort of centers around, like, you think, like, warrior, like, yes, culture. Yeah, that is very fascinating.
So often I think this happened to Leif Erikson, I'm not sure, but often if someone was ailing, they would just ask their son to just straight up kill them, like, in combat. Damn. They're like, fight me, boy, and so I can go to Valhalla and stuff like that. And so you get all that. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. But the Valkyries are the really incredibly talented warrior women that will lead the souls up to Valhalla, where they get to drink and dance forever. But all that. But Freya is the leader of those, has the chariot with the cats on it, which is awesome. She's the goddess of love and all of that stuff. She's sometimes said to be the same deity as the next one, which is Frigg. But that could be a translation error. I always thought they were two different people.
Yeah, as did I.
Yeah, but doing some further reading, some historians do believe that they are the same person. Like, specifically, Frigg is Odin's wife. So what some people say is that Freya is her when she is not with Odin. Frigg is her after she gets with Odin, or something like that. But there's, like, a duality of her. Because if we go over to Frigg, we also see her, and as I was doing some research, she was also around she had the cat chariot as well, which is something that is, like, Freya through and through. Right here, we see her talking with the Valkyries, and we know that Freya is the leader of them. So, is she the same person? It's hard to say. They're both associated with love and beauty, as well as a certain level of magic. So, it's possible that they were one person and then they split into two, or they were two people and they split into one. I don't know. But, Frigga is the direct wife of Odin. Like, anytime it says wife of Odin, it never says Freya is the wife of Odin, which is why people make that distinction. But you get Frigg as the wife of Odin, so she gets a seat of power for what it's worth. She's left out of some important discussions, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, so, you know, associated with crows and all that stuff, because Odin is as well. And if she is Freya, she's also associated with the Valkyries and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then just some notable stories. So the one on the left is the first ever myth that I ever heard ever. Obviously outside of like Christian or Jewish ideology, those myths. But the first I heard of anything else was the myth of Balder. So that glowing guy in the middle is Balder. He is the son of Freya, and he was fated to be killed by another god. And Freya, like, hears this prophecy, and she's like, oh, that's not happening. So she wants to go around and let nothing hurt him. So she goes down to Hela, and she's like, hey, it was prophesized that my son is gonna bite it hard. Can you make him invincible? And she's like, all right, that's a big ask, but if you go around to every single person and make every single person weep for Balder, he'll be immune to everything. Every single person that weeps for him is another thing he is invulnerable to. So one guy weeps for him, he can't be hit by silver. Another guy weeps, like a bull can't kick him in the head, stuff like that, you know. So Freya goes around to every single person, and they all weep, because Freya's probably a scary lady, being the leader of the Valkyries. If she is Frigg, she's, you know, wife of Odin, all that kind of stuff. Either way, she has connections. Everyone weeps except for one, and that is this giant lady, and Freya ends up, like, killing her, but Hel doesn't count that, so he's immune to one thing. And again, if you think about the Achilles myth, you know, a warrior god or a warrior figure being immune to immune to one
I guess.
thing.
Yeah.
You know, just like Achilles, his only weak spot was his heel, Balder was only weak to one thing. And Loki knows this because he talks to his daughter, I guess. We stand good father-daughter relationship. But he figures out that Balder is immune to mistletoe. He is weak to mistletoe. If he's hit with mistletoe, it'll be like getting hit like with a regular thing. So if you throw it hard enough at him, he'll die. So basically, nobody else knows this. So all the other gods that are just around Asgard made a game. And the game was who can throw the most stuff at Balder, because everything bounces off him. So they're throwing spears, fire, you know, arrows, everything at him. And they're just bouncing off him. And he's like, guys, I'm trying to read. And all that kind of stuff. But they made a game out of it. Like, they finish their drinks. They throw all their cups at him. All their dicks. But then Loki, you know, he figures out mistletoe. So he makes mistletoe arrows. And there's this other guy there. And his name is Hod. I'm pretty sure. I think it was Hod. Hod. And Hod is blind. And Hod hears all these other gods having so much fun. so much fun throwing things at Balder. He's like, I wish I could throw things at the kid. And Loki's like, you know what? That is so sad. It is just an absolute shame that you can't participate in this fun. Let me help you, good sir. So he gives him a bow, and that's what he's doing in the bottom left there. And he guides his hand, and he gives him the mistletoe arrow, and he's like, aim that way. And Hod's like, yes, and looses the arrow, and it goes straight into Balder's septum, and he's done. And he goes down to hell, and everyone freaks out. They're like, Hod, what are you doing? And Loki, like, tiptoes away. He's like, hee hee. And Hod's like, where am I? And all that kind of stuff. So, Freya obviously begs Hel. She's like, come on. Are you kidding me? Mistletoe? And Hel's like,
rules are rules.
Rules are, it is what it is. So, Balder died. And that's just some quality Loki trickery. The other one I'll just go through pretty shortly. This guy shows up to Asgard with this big ass horse, and all the gods are like, what do you want? And basically the guy's like, I want your wife, Odin. And Odin's like, that's a big ask. What are you gonna do? And he's like, I'm gonna build a wall around Asgard to help you guys during Ragnarok, because I know you guys need that. And Odin's like, that would be pretty helpful, but, that is my wife and stuff. So he calls a council meeting, which Frigg was not allowed into. Like, she didn't get a voice. Odin's, like, sitting around there, he's like, I wonder if I should let this guy take my wife. I'm thinking yes. And Frigg is calling from outside. She's like, I'm thinking no.
No.
But basically, they get to a tiebreaker. And Loki is the tiebreaker vote, so he establishes this metric. He's like, hey, if this guy isn't done by the end of winter, we don't pay him in Frigg, and we don't give him anything, and he goes home.
One Frigg, please.
And they're all like, all right, it's a deal. And Frigg's like, what the man I made. So... Loki goes out and he tells the guy, he's like, if you build this wall by the end of winter, you'll get the girl. Have fun. So the builder uses that massive horse you see in the front to carry boulders, because they were like, how is this guy going to build this wall? It's all in the horse. He carries these boulders over to Asgard to build this wall to protect them. And he's doing a pretty good job. It gets to the final day, and the horse would carry over 20 boulders every day. It's 20 boulders from being complete. It's this massive wall, right? And they all call an emergency meeting. They're like, hey, Loki, this is your fault now, because you said if he had until the end of winter, we're going to have to give him my wife. And Frigg is royally pissed off at Loki, so she's in his ear. She's all up in his business. And Loki's like, I got it. I'll figure it out. So the guy, he's carrying the 20 boulders all the way up, but all of a sudden the horse gets distracted, which is what you see in the picture. And it gets distracted by another horse, and it runs off, and the guy's like, no! He's still kind of ripped, so he can kind of carry like maybe 10 boulders, but the wall isn't done by the end of winter. And so all the gods come out, and they're like, rules are rules, it is what it is. But it turns out that the other horse was actually Loki, disguised as a female horse, who then copulated with the builder's horse, and then gave birth to Sleipnir, which is Odin's horse that has 6 legs. So, again, Loki just getting around. But it turns out that the builder was actually a frost giant, who was going to use Frigg to steal the sun and the moon. So it was good that Loki actually did good for once, because he royally screwed up. It was him covering his ass. And there you go. So, some prime... Nice. All the best stories have Loki in them, I gotta say.
Yep.
But, yeah. So, again, what I always found the most notable about it is that the gods are not omnipotent. They can be reasoned with. Like, the builder just showed up, and they, talked to him. They heard him out. If that happened, if a mortal somehow rolled up to Mount Olympus, dead immediately. The Norse gods are less powerful than the Greek gods. Like, it's not like Odin is, like, he's one of the most powerful, but he's nowhere near the, like, margin that Zeus has over all the other gods. It's more balanced, kind of like the Aztecs. The Aztecs were more balanced.
Immortal up to the Aztec gods realm.
It's
Good
just
Lord.
like it's
In-
just like they will be disassembled into their constituent organs.
Yeah.
Like that is the method of death.
God.
Like, yeah.
But-
Zeus at least it'll just be like lightning bolt. But
Yeah, gone.
Yeah.
But,
If you were killed by a lightning bolt, you wouldn't get a proper burial because they're like, yep, they.
interesting.
yeah.
Get struck by lightning. Wow.
What I always found the most notable is that the gods were doomed. Just like mortals. Mortals are doomed. The Norse saw that they were doomed, and they're like, you know what, the gods are too.
They can suffer with.
Honestly, that's what it was. It's this, like, stoicism of the acceptance of your own morality. And
Or
that's...
mortality.
Yeah, morality, my bad. Mortality. And of, like, also just combat being a thing. You know, like, Ragnarok's just one big
Being
combat.
important.
And if you don't die in combat, you can't go to heaven. All that. And that's really what sets the Norse myths apart.
Mm-hmm.
But, on to some final thoughts.
All right. Yeah, that was a fun episode.
Yeah.
All about mythology. So you guys both took a mythology class in school, right?
I did.
Mm-mm. I
You
did
didn't?
not.
Okay, Sebastian did. Okay.
I just thought about Greek mythology because my dad read it to me when I was a kid. I take Latin in school, so we learned a bit about Norse mythology, Roman mythology, but I mostly tune out, so it's not really learning. Okay.
Nice. Yeah, no, but yeah, so this is interesting. It's like ties in with history and it's just very interesting stories. I think it's very interesting how there's a lot of like commonality between
Yeah.
the different mythologies that like never interacted, and it's like sort of surprising. The same thing happens with different world religions where it's like many different world religions have a like flood story, as in like Noah and the Ark. Like that spans across religions. And so it's pretty interesting because it sort of taps into just the heart of like human psychology that for
There-
some reason,
Greek mythology too. That's what resolved Pandora's box, I believe.
oh,
I
interesting.
believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like there's something, I guess, intrinsic, you know, it sort of sheds light on human psychology and sociology and like the way that we process things. Because yeah, humans, one of the like most significant abilities of the human mind is the ability of pattern recognition, and the ability to analyze incoming data and like make intelligent actions based on that and beliefs based on that. And the problem is for so many ancient societies, there's just the world is just too complicated, and how could they possibly know? And the solution is that they come up with these stories, and it's just pretty interesting. And over time, we've figured out like a more accurate version of how these natural phenomena occur. But it's all pretty interesting anyway. Like it's fun stories,
Yeah.
interesting stories. I like them. But yeah, so
It was
yeah,
nice
you
knowing
guys
you
have
all were going to be smoked to pieces.
Yeah, I think the
Most
Greeks are
ideas.
coming after Pluto, the Aztecs are coming after me, and everyone's coming after Max. I don't know
Everyone's
why.
coming after me. All right, fair enough. I just
I
take
know.
offense
You know
to
what?
it.
I think you're gonna get roped into a Loki scheme somehow.
I might get roped into a Loki scheme.
Don't trust any strangers.
Loki's gonna be like, yeah, Loki's gonna be like, oh, would you like to purchase this Bic pen? And I'll be like, that does look like a pretty nice Bic pen.
But
And
it's the
it'll turn
world
out to be
serpent
like the
disguised.
world snake. Yeah,
And yeah. Just
yeah.
destroys you.
It'll crush my hand to the table, and I'll be stuck there. And I'll be like, no, whatever shall I do? Anyway, yeah. So thank you guys both for being here. Thank you, Pluto, for being our guest today, and shedding light on Greek mythology. Thank you to everyone who watched this episode and talked to us, and thank you, Sebastian, for being my co-host as always.
As always.
And with that, we will see you guys all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.